My brother had an affair with my fiancée, got her pregnant before my wedding, and my parents supported him over me. This will be a lengthy one, and it's as disorganized as it sounds. Though there is much to explore here, I will attempt to keep it as succinct as feasible. Whether someone believes this or not doesn't matter. It's just so ridiculous that I have to voice this. I won't sugarcoat anything either, but I will steer clear of any information that would allow someone unfamiliar with the circumstances to identify myself. Up until a few months ago, I was engaged to my 5-year girlfriend. We will call her Sarah. 32-year-old guy. Let's call my younger brother Mike. He is 29 and has always been the perfect child in our family. I have to provide some background on my family and how we came to this place if I truly want to grasp the depth of this betrayal and why it struck me so deeply. Mike could not do anything wrong in our parents' view growing up, whereas I was continuously chastised for the most minor transgressions. This was clear and severe, not simply ordinary sibling rivalry or minor partiality. Mike broke something, and I would be accused. I would be the one grounded while he started a fight. He would get a new video game console if we both received straight A's. I would get a pat on the back and be advised to keep it up. Our parents, Tom and Linda, always found a justification for their actions. Mike's younger brother requires more attention. Given you are the older one, you ought to know better. We have to be careful with Mike, he is just more sensitive. I felt unworthy and unwanted in my own house from the never-ending assault of double standards and gaslighting. The preference just grew as we aged. When I enrolled on a partial scholarship in a decent college, my parents hardly noticed. But they threw Mike a big celebration and purchased him a car to drive with when he decided to enroll in community college. Not mind that for years I had been riding 5 miles each way to my part-time work. I left right away to get away from the poisonous surroundings at home. I worked 2 jobs, pay debt, and negotiate college. Mike left a semester later, saying he didn't belong in college. Our parents entirely agreed with his choice, complimenting him for knowing himself and for not fitting social norms. Over the next 5 years, they even funded his string of failing companies. My family always found a way to drag me back in, even with the space I tried to create between us. Holiday dinners were a torture of subdued jabs and not quite subtle comparisons. Oh, are you still working at that entry-level job? Well, Mike is considering launching another company. He is quite entrepreneurial. Not that I was really laying a solid career while Mike was devouring our folks' retirement money. I tried to keep a friendship with Mike despite all. Though it was always one-sided, he remained my brother after all. I would try to connect, reach out, and he would either ignore me or find some way to make the discussion into a competition he might win. Should I get promoted, he would suddenly have a great opportunity right ahead. If I began dating someone, he would also magically be in a committed relationship. I met Sarah in one of my attempts to get back in touch with Mike. We clicked right away as she was friends with one of his brief relationships. Smart, humorous, compassionate, and extremely beautiful, Sarah was everything I had ever wanted in a companion. We began dating, and for the first time in my life I felt really cherished and joyful. My parents were inevitably less than delighted. They questioned what Sarah saw in me and made disparaging remarks about how she was out of my level. Mike, on the other hand, started abruptly to show great interest in my life. Wanting to know everything about Sarah, he would ask about her non-stop. I was simply glad he seemed to be interested in something from my life at the time. Looking back, I ought to have spotted the warning signs. After 1 year of dating, Sarah and I moved in together and things were fantastic. We both drove, had decent jobs, and discussed the future. I began to feel as though perhaps, just maybe, I could have the great profession, loving partner, maybe even children someday that I had always wanted. On our 4th anniversary, I asked Sarah. It was simply a peaceful supper at home and a moving speech, nothing spectacular. She answered yes, and I thought I was on top of things. We agreed to engage in a protracted process and slow down wedding preparation. We had our whole life ahead of us. Or so I believed. We were not in a hurry. To put it mildly, the responses were mixed when we told my family we were engaged. Saying, "Oh, how nice," in a tone that implied it was anything but, my mother slapped on a fake grin. "Grunt," my dad murmured, "good luck with that," then turned back to watch the TV. Mike, though, had the most unusual response. He praised us, but his smile seemed almost predatory and wrong. I dismissed it then, attributing it to my own fears. Work stress and wedding plans occupied the next year. Working long hours at our jobs, Sarah and I were saving money for the wedding and a down payment on a house. Though we saw less of each other than we used to, I reasoned it was only a phase. Every marriage experiences difficult times. Looking back, I ought to have seen the warning signals. Sarah grew more aloof, constantly on her phone, grinning at texts from someone she would rapidly claim to be merely an acquaintance from work. She began leaving more with her pals, arriving late home smelling of cologne and wine. I did, however, entirely trust her. I never even gave her any thought regarding possible cheating, let alone with my own brother. Sarah started acting somewhat strangely over 4 months ago. She was temperamental, restless, and often sick. Thrilled with the possibility, I considered perhaps she might be pregnant. We had not been trying, but we discussed wanting children at last. Imagining nursery colors and baby names, I began to arrange how I would help her. She dropped the bomb one evening after sitting down with tears in her eyes. Though not mine, she was pregnant. I looked shocked. Our hectic schedules had caused us not to be close in a while, but I never anticipated she would cheat on me. She broke down totally and mumbled, "It's Mike," when I inquired who the father was. My whole universe collapsed in that instant. Everything I knew, everything I had built my life around, came toppling. I found it difficult to breathe. I had no ideas. I could only feel this intense loss and treachery. Sarah tried to clarify. Her words came out in a hurry between sobbing. Apparently, it began during our engagement party. Mike had cornered her and informed her she was making a mistake in marriage. Playing on her insecurities, he reassured her she could do better and he could give her everything I couldn't. They had been having an affair for months, so it was not just a one-time occurrence. That evening, I sent Sarah out. I couldn't stand to look at her or be in the same room as the lady who had so totally betrayed me. She begged me to pardon her. Said it was a mistake. Said she loved me. But all I could think of was how many times she had lied to my face. She had been with my brother how many times wearing the ring I had given her? I phoned Mike after Sarah went. Not even now can I recall what I said. All of it was a haze of hurt and wrath. At first, he attempted to seem cool, saying it was only a drunken error and that it had no bearing on anything. He became hostile and responded, "Well, maybe if you'd have been a better fiancé, she wouldn't have come to me." When I pressed him, I observed red. Ready to do anything that would cause him regretting what he said, I got in my car and headed to his flat. Though I'm not sure what I intended to do, our parents were already there when I arrived. Mike apparently initially phoned them, crafting some narrative about how Sarah had seduced him and how terrible he felt. And you also know what? They came to believe him. Always they do. While my dad merely stood there with his arms crossed, looking disappointed in me, of course, not in his dear Mike, my mom started lecturing me about forgiveness and family right away. They wouldn't listen when I tried to describe exactly what happened. They insisted that since family comes first, I should forgive Mike and help Sarah through the pregnancy. I forgot. Years of pent-up wrath and bitterness spilled forth. I told them just what I thought of their distorted sense of devotion. How they had always favored Mike at my cost. How they never once stood on my side or helped me. Mike was dead to me, I informed him. He was no longer my brother. Since they no longer had me, I advised my parents they could have the son they had always desired. Ignoring their calls and pleads, I bolted. Without a goal in mind, I drove for hours just desiring to get away from everything and everyone. When I got home, I had hundreds of missed calls and messages, some from Sarah begging for another opportunity, some from Mike alternately between apologies and accusations, but most were from my parents, demanding that I grow up and atone. I seldom ate, hardly slept, ignored them all. Using all of my accumulated vacation time, I called out of business. I avoided everybody and found it intolerable to have to explain what had happened. Trying to find where I'd gone wrong, I simply sat in my apartment going back over every minute of my relationship with Sarah and every contact with Mike. 3 months have gone by now. To handle all this turmoil, I changed my number, relocated to a new apartment, and began treatment. Still, my family won't let go. Even with my best attempts to cut touch, they find ways to meddle in my life. Starting to show up at my place of employment, they are trying to ambush me and drive a reconciliation. Crying about how I'm separating the family, my mother corners me in the parking lot, gruff voicemails from my dad on how I should man up and pardon Mike. Mike has personally tried to approach me on a few occasions, but thus far I have been able to dodge him. To guilt trip me into forgiving Mike, they have even dispatched flying monkeys, that is, extended family members. Suddenly blowing my phone, aunts, uncles, cousins I haven't spoken to in years are reminding me how important family is and how I should let bygones be. They seem to be living in some other world where what Mike and Sarah did was only a minor error rather than a life-altering one. The most recent growth is yesterday Sarah sent me a note. She intends to co-parent with Mike and is keeping the baby. And now, guess what? About becoming grandparents, My parents are over the moon and totally overlooked the circumstances of how it happened and the nasty comments my mother and father made when Sarah was with me. Apologues and explanations abound in the letter, which discussed how Mike and she had discovered true love in trying circumstances. She even dared to add she hoped the child will benefit from us all being friends someday. I am at the very end of it. Part of me wants to simply sever ties entirely and start over somewhere else. Perhaps go to another state, change my name, create a new life free from knowledge of this mess. Another side of me, though, is so enraged that I want to stay and fight so they may realize how screwed up things are overall. Not sure what to do going forward. Every sphere of my life has suffered from betrayal. Alone with my thoughts makes me uncomfortable. I never gave dating any thought either. I get terrified thinking of depending on someone like that. Folks who believe I should choose the high road and reconcile with my family, as if I am the one in the wrong for not wanting to play happy families with the folks who most wounded me, have lost friends over this too. The idea of Sarah and Mike having a kid together, a child that ought to have been mine, is like a continual knife in my stomach. Logically, the youngster is innocent in all this. The baby's parents are lying, cheating scumbags. It is not the baby's fault. But I cannot feel anything nice about its existence. My parents have begun discussing my obligation to participate in the lives of the child and my role as an uncle. I get sick physically at the idea. How am I expected to approach this child without spotting the final emblem of my brother's treachery? Reddit, I suppose my question is. Am I the expletive for not forgiving my brother and ex-fiancé? Is it bad of me to wish to terminate relations with my family over this? Any guidance on how to move forward would be much valued since right now I feel as though gaslighting and treachery are drowning me in the sea. I understand this was lengthy. If you have read thus far, thank you. In a sense, just writing all this out has been relieving. I'm not sure what I should anticipate from publishing this. Maybe validation, guidance, or maybe just the opportunity to yell into the void and have someone, anybody, hear me. Edit. Holy mess, this exploded overnight. I appreciate all of your support and counsel. The response overwhelms me, and it will take some time to look over all the comments. Nonetheless, I wanted to answer some typical queries. 1. Certainly, I have discussed a restraining order against my family with a lawyer. It is under work. 2. No, I am not intending to interact with the baby. Although the child is not at fault, I cannot be engaged without losing my sanity. 3. For anyone curious about my employment. I have previously discussed the matter with HR. They are sympathetic and aware. They have given me the opportunity to work from home more regularly and raised front desk security levels. I appreciate their awareness. 4. Many of you have inquired whether I have given any thought to migrating to another city or state. I am very definitely considering this. There are offices of my company in various other cities, hence a relocation could be feasible. I am balancing the advantages and disadvantages. 5. To those advocating DNA testing, Sarah came clean about the affair and the chronology fits. I have no cause to think the child isn't Mike's. Even if by some miracle it turned out to be mine, I'm not sure I could ever look at that child without considering this. 6. The volume of persons relating such tales has overwhelmed me. Knowing how frequent this kind of treachery is breaks my heart, but it also curiously comforts me since I'm not alone. I appreciate everyone's vulnerability and sharing. 7. To the person asking whether I had thought about suing Mike for alienation of affection, I investigated it but sadly, my state does not accept it. Though right now I'm not sure I have the stamina for a legal fight. 8. Several have noted that Mike's actions seem egotistical. Many of the articles I have begun reading about narcissistic personality disorder speak to me. Though not justification, some of his behavior helps me to comprehend. 9. For anyone wondering about Sarah's family, they are as startled and repulsed as one would anticipate. They have cut off communication with her and contacted me to give their support. Though little consolation, I value it. 10. To the person wondering whether I considered having children of my own someday, to be honest, this whole experience has made me doubt whether I want a family at all. I'm trying though, not to make any major decisions while I'm still digesting things. Though I'll let you know if anything noteworthy occurs, right now I'm concentrating on recovery and forward movement. Once more, thanks to Reddit. More than you would realize, you have contributed. Your guidance and encouragement have really been a lifeline amid trying circumstances and have given me much to consider. Though I can't answer every remark, kindly know I'm reading them all and they help me feel less isolated in this. Update 1. Hey Reddit, it's been a total roller coaster 2 weeks since my last post. First of all, I want to thank everyone for the great advice and support. Reading over all your responses has been both sad and yet consoling. I never anticipated my post to explode like that. The frequency of this sort of treachery is disorganizing. To put it mildly, the last several weeks have been demanding. Recall my remark of working on a restraining order. That descended into a complete ordeal though. We had a hearing booked after my attorney turned in the paperwork. Given the facts and ongoing harassment, I felt it would be simple. I corrected myself. With their own attorney, an elegant man in an expensive suit most likely charging more per hour than I earn in a week, my parents turned up for the hearing. Claiming I was separating the family over a basic misunderstanding. As if Mike had stumbled and fallen into my fiancé, they painted me as the unstable one. Luckily the judge was not purchasing it. She issued the restraining order against Mike and my parents, but not without my mother crying in the courtroom and my father gazing at me like I had just committed murder. Mike's expression though, I swear, if looks could kill, I would be 6 feet under. Mike tried to get to me as we were exiting the courtroom, reminding his attorney of the recently imposed restraining order. She stood between us. Mike merely scoffed and stated that I couldn't hide behind a piece of paper permanently. This is not over. If I said his remarks didn't knock me a bit, I would be lying. For now, at least I have some legal protection. Another dream has been the office scenario. Recall how I mentioned my family had started showing up at my workplace? That reached a head last week though. My assistant buzzed in reporting my mother was in the lobby and creating a scene while I was in a meeting with a client. She apparently brought a photo album and was trying to show my colleagues infant images of Mike and me as she sobbed over how her boys used to be so close. I left the conference and descended to the lobby, where I discovered my mother surrounded by a bunch of awkward-looking colleagues. She was midway in recounting how Mike and I used to bathe each other when young children. She rushed toward me when she saw me, chatting about a baby shower, but I stopped her. She should leave right away, I told her, or I would call the cops and have her taken off for trespassing against the restraining order. Her expression resembled what I would have slapped her with, but after everything they have gone through, I couldn't muster myself to care. Security let her out, and I had to spend the next hour damage management with my employer and colleagues. Fortunately, most of them were understanding, but I could see others were wondering what kind of drama I was bringing into the workplace. Still, the incident with Mike was where it truly veers off course. I was at the gym last Saturday working out some of my resentment on the punching bag. I was so intent on my exercise that I didn't see someone approaching me until I heard his voice. As I whirled around, Mike was grinning at me like he hadn't just broken the restraining order. He began to run his lips loud enough for others close to hear. He chuckled when I urged him to go before I phoned the police, claiming he would tell them how I had been threatening Sarah and him. I became lost at that point. My fist hooked with his jaw as I struck at him. He stammered back, then launched himself at me. Except this time, no one told me to be the larger person and let Mike win. We ended up on the floor trading punches like we were kids again, without parents to break us up. Before the gym personnel drew us apart, I made a few decent hits. I could feel my eye bulging closed while Mike's nose was bleeding. We were both screaming, seeking release and aiming at one another once more. It was only when the gym manager threatened to call the police that I snapped out of it. I got ready and headed off. Still pulsing with excitement, I answered a call from an unidentified number as I was headed home. Against better taste, I responded to it. Sarah, shouting at me about how I had cracked Mike's nose, might require surgery. I laughed. It was not against will. Her anger at me following all they had done seemed ridiculous, too much. I apologized to her for hurting her little boyfriend, the one she had been sleeping with behind my back for months. She began to cry then, continuing on about her stress, how the baby could sense her misery and how selfish I could be. I blocked the number and hung on hers. The fight produced quite a strong blowback. News had crept across our social circle like wildfire. Texts from friends and relatives, some supporting me and others calling me names for beating my poor defenseless brother, were exploding on my phone. Reaching out once more, Sarah's parents expressed their dismay in their daughter and reiterated their support of me. Though at this point I'll take anything I can get, it was a meager comfort. Nowadays, the restraining order seems inadequate. Mike has proved he is ready to break it, hence I am concerned about his future actions. The legal fallout has been a horror show. My attorney called me the day following the gym incident. Mike apparently had accused me of assault. I described what had happened. How Mike had provoked me. How he had broken the restraining order. We would fight it, my lawyer groaned, but given that I delivered the first punch, it might be an uphill struggle. We are already pressing our own charges against Mike for breaching the restraining order. Though nothing is definite, my attorney feels sure this will strengthen our case. I had to show the cops the marks on my face and knuckles and make statements to them. Having to defend myself against my own brother makes one embarrassed. Mike and I have been banned from the gym, although I can't say I blame them. It sucks. That gym was one of the only places I felt I could properly release some of my wrath. I have always been close to my cousin Amy, so she contacted me the other day. The family has been complaining a lot about her supporting me, but she is not wavering. She shared with me some of what goes on behind the scenes. My parents apparently have been telling everyone I'm experiencing some sort of mental collapse. They claim I'm just jealous and can't let go since Sarah and Mike's relationship began shortly following our breakup. While some family members are buying it, Amy notes that many others are not. Knowing that they are out there propagating lies about me while I'm trying to keep my head down and heal irritates me. Things at work have been, to put it mildly, strained. I can sense my colleagues are walking on eggshells around me following the incident with my mother in the lobby and the fight with Mike that is trending on local social media. Early this week, my manager summoned me into his office. He began by stating he valued me as an employee and that I'm going through a trying period, but then he really hit me. He believes it would be best if I took a break just till things calm down. If you would want, he continued, we can call it a personal sabbatical, paid, of course. I wanted to disagree, telling him that right now only work keeps me sane, but I could see the choice had already been taken. I agreed, thanked him for his patience, and got to work packing my office. Two of my colleagues were gossiping about how my brother had got my fiancée pregnant as I was leaving. I departed slamming my office door louder than required, rather pleased to see them jump. Saying all of this isn't hurting me would be dishonesty. To get out of my apartment, I have started late-night lengthy rides. Sometimes I find myself wondering how the hell my life turned into such a mess when parked outside my previous apartment, the one I lived with Sarah. Amid all of this turmoil, I discovered help from an unlikely source, Sarah's younger sister Emma. Emma contacted me on social media, apologizing for her sister's behavior and lending her support. I was first dubious. What if this were some sort of trick? But after chatting with her, I found she shares my hatred of Sarah's actions. She has been sharing with me details on Sarah and Mike's life. Apparently, they have moved in together and act as though they did not simply blow up many lives to be together. Emma says Sarah has been trying to present herself as the victim in all this, sobbing to anybody who will listen about how she never meant to hurt anyone. And in what ways she and Mike are soulmates who found each other against all odds. I get ill to my stomach from it, but I appreciate Emma keeping me current. After all, information is power, even if it is knowledge I would prefer not have. Another horror has been the social media scenario. When it comes to social media, I have always been a really quiet person. But this whole incident has put me in an unwelcome public view. On a local Facebook group, someone, probably one of Mike's buddies, posted about our gym brawl. The post omitted our names, but it sufficiently detailed the circumstances to allow anyone who knows us to work it out. The section on comments became a battlefield. Some people were supporting me, claiming Mike received his just compensation. Others called me erratic and advised I should be locked up. One night after a few too many beers, I made the grave error of looking over some of the comments. I ended up hard enough tossing my phone across the room to break the screen. Since then, I have turned off most of my social media accounts. The continuous alerts and the messages from folks I haven't spoken to in years suddenly wanting all the juicy specifics of my personal life make me unable to handle it. Having all that has transpired, I have come to see I cannot continue to live in this city. Too many memories abound. Too many opportunities for running across either Mike or Sarah or my parents. I've been researching moves inside my organization. Our Seattle office has a seemingly interesting opening. Though I've never loved continuous rain, at this point I would relocate to the moon if it would mean escaping all this drama. Though I have not yet made any decisions, the concept of a fresh start is growing more and more intriguing. New city, new apartment, new life. Somewhere nobody remembers me as the man whose brother knocked down his fiancée. Since the restraining order was obtained, my parents have been unusually silent. I'm waiting for the other shoe to fall so they may find some fresh approach to try to push their way back into my life. Sarah has been distributing the word of her pregnancy all around. Emma tells me she has been sharing regular updates on social media, ultrasound images, belly shots, the works, always with a caption regarding how grateful she and Mike are, how thrilled they are to start their family. Every additional bit of data feels like a fresh wound opening. The hurt just waiting to resurface when I start to heal. Right now then, is where things stand. I felt 2 weeks ago that my life could not become any more disorganized, but strangely it has. I still hurt and am angry, but I also am exhausted. Tired of justifying myself. Thus Reddit, I suppose this is more of an update than a change of direction. Not sure, a cry into the emptiness. Right now I'm not even clear about what I'm asking for. Advice? Affordability? Time machine? I could go back and never introduce Sarah to my brother. I'll attempt to keep you all informed whatever occurs going forward. More to me than you could realize is the result of your support. It's encouraging to be reminded that even if it seems as though lies and treachery rule my entire life, there are still decent individuals out there. Final update. Hey Reddit, I'm back with what I expect to be my last post on this entire fiasco after not updating for a week. First of all, I want to thank each of you for your help and guidance along this process. During the worst of my life, your comments have been a lifeline. Where therefore ought one to start? In just 7 days, a lot has transpired. I am still working to sort it all. I suppose I would begin with the most important news. I am relocating. Indeed, that's correct. I jumped in and agreed to a transfer to our Seattle headquarters. Though it was not a simple choice, I felt I needed a fresh start following all that had gone down. The choice followed last week's really difficult day. I had just returned from another meeting with my attorney regarding Mike's assault allegations when I came upon a note in my mailbox. From Sarah it was. Curiosity won me over even though I nearly threw it away without opening it. Inside was a handwritten note discussing her and Mike's great excitement about their baby and an ultrasonic image. She continued on regarding how the baby would love to have its uncle in its life and how I could find it in my heart to be pleased for them. Red caught my eye. I had grabbed my phone, unblocked Sarah, and phoned her before I knew what I was doing. She grabbed up the second ring and I let loose. I informed her exactly what I considered her, Mike, and their contented small family to be. If she believed I would ever want anything to do with that child, I told her she was insane. As far as I could tell, Mike, the baby, and she could all go to hell. Though it wasn't my best moment, it seemed like I'd at last uttered all the things I had been holding back. I realized then I had to leave this city. That same evening, I phoned my supervisor and said I wanted to move to Seattle. To be really honest, he seemed relieved. He was probably concerned about how this drama would damage the business. He guaranteed to expedite the documentation, and by the next morning it was official. 2 weeks allowed me to pack my life and go across the nation. My family and social circle soon started to buzz with word of my relocation. Normally, my parents were rather angry. Once more breaking the restraining order, they showed up at my flat unannounced trying to talk me out of it. Saying I was deserting the family, my mother was crying. Red-faced and furious with my selfish and immature behavior, my dad was ranting. I stayed quiet. I just phoned the cops and had them taken off for breaching the restraining order. My mother yelled that I would regret this, that family was everything, and I was throwing it all away as they were being let out. I just closed the door and resumed packing. Mike responded in a different way. Presumably because of ongoing legal concerns, he did not try to personally reach out to me. Instead, he posted a long piece on social media on how some people struggle to see others happy and on how he and Sarah were overcoming hate to concentrate on their new family. Clearly meant for me, it sought to present himself as the victim. Though I'll confess it stung to see how many people liked and commented in support of him, I told myself that their viewpoint doesn't count as they don't know the reality. Among the most unexpected responses was Sarah's. Following our phone talk, she contacted her sister Emma, who, should you recall, had been keeping me informed on Sarah and Mike's developments. My statements apparently struck closer than I had anticipated. Emma informed me Sarah had broken down, confessing she was afraid of the future and felt what she and Mike had done was terrible. Bless her, my cousin Amy said she could help me pack. She even informed me further about the family's situation. Amy informed me that my aunt, the sister of my mother, had a major blowout with her mother, calling her out for consistently favoring Mike and driving me away. It grew really heated, with my aunt remarking that with their years of favoritism, my mom and dad were reaping what they had created. That someone is at last calling them out on their behavior makes me somewhat happy. Although the legal matter is still under flux, my attorney tells me that my relocation has no bearing on anything. Mike broke the restraining order, hence we are still charging him fees, and we are contesting the assault accusations he leveled against me. Given Mike's track record of breaking the restraining order, my attorney feels sure the judge would see through his lies. Moving across the nation should also help prove that I am not a threat to Mike, thereby helping to have his charges dropped. After this, I'm not sure whether I will publish any more updates. Starting anew means bidding farewell to the past, and as beneficial as this community has been, I believe it's time for me to distance myself from rewriting this narrative. I have to concentrate on starting my new life instead of muckering the old one. This thus seems to be my last update. Hope for me, Reddit. In Seattle, I have a completely fresh life ready for me and want to maximize it. I discovered my wife's affair during her writing workshop, hired a P1, gathered evidence, and vanished without a trace before she returned home. Though my friends call me AB, never Andy, I go by Andrew Baker. Every now and then there's a nasty drunk or uneducated man trying to act too familiar and calls me Andy. "So Andy, what's your job?" they probe. I reply, "I made this neat little tool for cops to check drunk individuals from 40 feet away. They have even begun to link them to radars throughout town. That typically shuts them down. That gadget isn't real, though, should you still not know it yet. I obviously have not much tolerance for stupidity. Lie to me, and things go bad. I'm a straightforward guy, not complicated at all. I am content in my career and lead a simple life. I am an engineer employed by a large national corporation with offices scattered over the nation. I have pals, and although I'm not a heavy drinker, I do have a sporadic beer. Though that's my struggle, honestly I tend more toward nachos. I try to keep myself in reasonable form for my age since, if I let it spiral out of hand, I will gain weight. Every chance I had, I used to go sailing. Now, having a wife and 2 small girls takes up a lot of time. I sold the yacht at last. That was only one of the concessions I have voluntarily given over the years in order to spend quality time with the individuals truly important to me. For 25 years, Karen and I have been contentedly married. Her level of education is high school teacher. Right now our 2 girls are at college. While her younger sister Denise is in Boston University, Claire is a student at Brown University in Rhode Island. I most certainly couldn't afford those pricey universities, but fortunately the girls are committed students with outstanding scholarships. Our house is in North Carolina, more precisely the Research Triangle. It revolves on some outstanding Raleigh institutions and is flanked by first-rate high-tech businesses. One may live and work here quite nicely. Though it would just make me hungry, I could tell you about Carolina BBQ. When the daughters chose institutions up north, I was a little let down, but I know they had to venture beyond their comfort zone, and that is eventually a good thing. Our daughters are wonderful, smart, humorous, lovely young women with strong moral principles. Though I am daily concerned about their safety, I have faith in their judgment. Seeing children mature and start their path towards independence meant that my wife and I could at last have some alone time once more. For some time, I had been excited about this stage. I pictured going home every evening to a loving wife who would concentrate on me, and vice versa, with both girls away at college. I saw us picking back up our relationship and having happy days. It resembled almost exactly being newlyweds once more. We could have dinners out, go to movies and plays, and at last rediscover each other the way I had always wanted. But reality turned out very differently than I had imagined. To be honest, thinking back on that first year of an empty nest, I saw Karen changing. Her hobbies seemed to be changing. Although the change was slow, in time it became increasingly clear. At first I saw these as her means of blossoming. Now our girls were no longer living with us. But finally I came to see that her priorities and values were undergoing a major change. English teacher Karen specializes in creative writing. She is fairly speaking a frustrated writer as well. She never really had the opportunity to write as she desired, being a teacher and young mother. Karen writes during the summer and whenever she could spare an hour or two, but so far not much has come out of it. She liked to compile rejection letters after sending her essays and short tales to literary publications. Her ideal magnificent masterwork was never realized. Though as a writer she has never ventured beyond predictable and perhaps too theatrical tales, I will admit I enjoy reading her. She has a romanticized view of what a writer should be, and covertly I believe she is more drawn to the concept than the actual work. Still, I'm happy too if she is happy. Karen has belonged to several writing clubs most of our marriage. Aiming to help each other's writing, these are meetings of people who come together to offer comments, ideas, and conversations about their work. While some of these organizations seem to be more like clubs of mutual adoration, others seem really useful to me. Her last group, the one she belonged to when everything broke down, contained components of both. They alternated visiting each other's houses, and during their encounters here, I would try to give them privacy. I tried once but stopped since Karen and a few others objected. There are about 10 people in Karen's present writing group, men as well as women. While some of them I could live without, others I enjoy. When you meet them, half of them really are relatively average and the other half really stand out. For example, the lady Reggie is rather passionate in creating biographies and history. She still manages to captivate readers despite doing scholarly-oriented book writing and serious research. I have loved reading all of her works. Betty likes to write fantasy. She tends more toward the talking unicorn type than I would have her as the next J.K. Rowling. She's nice, and her writing seems to be mostly for her own enjoyment. Who can dispute that? Bill takes on the group's know-it-all function. Apart from that, he appears all good. A bit of that goes a long way. Then Frank comes in. The first time I saw him, I felt scared. Ever since, those alarms have kept ringing in my head. It was very evident when I met Frank that I was being introduced to him rather than the other way round. Examining me, he asked, "So Andy, what's your profession?" I looked at my wife. She shook her head and somewhat frowned. I said simply, "I'm an engineer." Frank gave no smile, more of a smirk in reply. Though not precisely out of earshot, I said I had given up trying to interact with their group and preferred to keep rather hidden and quiet. Until they forget, I usually find myself in the next room silently working or on the rear porch with a window open so I could hear their talk. Frank seems to share private jokes and a connection that makes me uneasy when he talks to Karen, early on I found. He occasionally makes her ego stronger and other times seems as though he understands her inner thoughts in a way I value less. He mentions past talks that seem to be only between them, and I get the sense that the rest of the group doesn't recall those times. Although it's only a feeling, I have informed her I find it unpleasant. She dismisses my worries, and I know not to press the topic. She knows my feelings, the rest is up to her. During its sessions, the group performs a set ritual. Their work session ends with some wine and relaxation. It was during this period that I came to see some of them were just acting. It took place in the midst of the spring semester, close to early March, when the subject turned to the way actual writers lived. Oh, all the eminent writers were alcoholics. That's right. They drank in the afternoons and evenings and penned in the mornings. It awakens the mind to fresh concepts and helps one to relax. Their creative ideas then start to flow in the mornings and they start writing. Actually, the really great writers all went through love relationships. That's the real inspiration for them. Frank was saying just that. Thanks for providing, Frank. I'm beginning to get your perspective. Karen's words then really hit me like a gut punch. Indeed, exactly. The real inspiration is found in the intensity and the thrill of the unknown, that is, in keeping it all secret from everyone else. I persuaded myself it was only a joke as some of them laughed and others didn't. Still, I listened in on their chat all through the evening. Maybe we should all have a wild night of passion sometime and then each write the next great American novel. Bill had that. I wasn't sure if he meant it humoristically or not. Not great writing comes from character defects. Features like humanity, empathy, and facing the riddles of the unknown really help to create great stories. I said before that Betty appealed to me. Memorable tales are about conquering obstacles, aiming for excellence in spite of all the odds, and leaving the planet in a better condition than it was in before. Well, perhaps if you conjure the right enchantment, we can avoid all the hassle. Again, that was that jackass Frank. To their shame, some in the group seemed to find that humorous. I had a hunch Reggie didn't either, and I'm not quite sure Betty did. They were debating writer drinking practices and affairs, and I kept listening without offering anything. Then I overheard a fascinating bit of their chat. Is anyone else planning to apply for the Illinois Writer Workshop this summer? Frank was now speaking once more. Oh, I turned in my application already. Keeping my fingers crossed will help them to accept me. 6 weeks of just writing and talking with other authors could truly change things for me. This was Karen. I had never heard of her before. Frank caught it up straight immediately. I am sure they will welcome you. Your work has improved really dramatically this past year. I think you will get admitted. I've also applied. I'm not as sure I'll be in though. My own feeling of internal radar for stupidity was off target. Frank, really, when did you start to get so modest? Though at this point I still loved and trusted my wife, I didn't like what I was hearing. Trust is basic when you have been married for the length of time we have. You ask not, is she up to no good? Not even cross your head the idea. Your mate is your other half. Marriage is a partnership. She has proved her dedication year after year. All you really want is for her to discover the success and happiness she so deserves, or at least that is what you think. Later on though, everything falls apart when you find your confidence has been betrayed. Update 1. I let myself ignore the overheard exchange from that evening over time. As I said, I trusted my wife entirely. Some younger males might not understand it, but trust becomes a way of life rather than only a decision after being married for more than 20 years. Late April found me finishing some outside gardening when I decided to call it a day and head indoors. Reaching for the kitchen door, I discovered my wife on the phone exclaiming, "I can't wait, 6 whole weeks without any responsibilities, no commitments, and no one waiting for me to get back." At the last bit I started to perk. I stopped in front of her and listened. Absolutely. Those 6 weeks will be the most self-indulgent of my life. I owe it to myself. You too owe it to yourself. Not one of these appealed to me. I walked through the kitchen opening the door. Karen appeared shocked. Well, I have to sprint. AB is here and I have to start cooking dinner. She grabbed fast. I said, "Who was that on the phone?" "Oh, just Regina. We were discussing the shortly closing of schools." "Like heck it was," I said. I wanted to probe her about some of her remarks, particularly one about no one waiting for me to come home, but I realized that tonight the truth might be in scarce supply. Though I tried to hide it for the moment, my attitude worsened. Dinner later that evening, the other shoe dropped. "AB, the amazing news I got today will not surprise you. Recall that Illinois writer workshop for which you applied?" "Come on, you hardly pay attention to me." To be honest, I had heard about the workshop before. But that was only because I had overheard her talking about it over a month ago. "I don't remember you stressing it." "Sure, I did. I applied for a 6-week workshop for authors. At the University of Illinois, it falls mid-June through late July. Their lecturers give lectures. They also bring in eminent authors for seminars and debate forums. We then get rather busy writing. I was accepted and this is an amazing chance." "That sounds excellent, honey. We could certainly handle it financially. Perhaps I might join you and take a little time off from work. I would really enjoy listening to those authors speak." Her response appeared odd. "Well, we can think about it. I won't have much free time to spend with you over the very demanding 6 weeks." My gut was tingling once more. "Well, you know I'm not exacting. I could be the group's coffee guy." She gave a really tense smile. "That may be lovely, darling. Let us monitor things." Such deflections have come from both sides. I knew what they meant. She was making sure I wouldn't wind up traveling to Illinois with her. "I get the sense you would rather I didn't go with you." "Oh no, it is not like that. I merely worry you might find it boring. You're into computers and circuits, and this is basically writers discussing major concepts." I kept that to myself. Back off, I thought. When I was being excluded, I knew. I said, ending the discussion, "I'm sure you'll excel." After Karen retired to bed later that evening, I checked our phone records online. AT&T provides that capability. All incoming and outgoing calls as well as text messaging are logged. When I looked over the phone log, the call I had cut off wasn't with Reggie. Or if it was, Frank's phone started it. When you find your wife lying and learning she has plans to exclude you, it's amazing how quickly trust can fall apart after a quarter century of marriage. Weeks went by, and she appeared fixated on the workshop's talks. She rejected the idea every time I tried several times to talk about maybe visiting at some time or going with her. She next moved from rationalizing to manipulating. "AB, I have some interesting news. Late June saw me get you and Jake 2 passes to a fishing camp in northern Canada. You can take Jake, and both of you will love fishing for those large brown fish you constantly mention. Although it was very costly, I wanted to show thanks for your understanding of the writer's workshop. And I felt a little bad since you wouldn't be having fun, hence I want you to go and have a fantastic time. We may then discuss our experiences when I get back." Something didn't seem right. "Thanks, sweetheart, that shows consideration of you. To be honest, I would enjoy your company more. AB, we have seen this. Simply said, it makes no sense. I will be working all through. I would feel guilty ignoring you in such a manner." I looked at her face and eyes momentarily, trying to make sense of it. Was it contempt? "Thanks, honey. Canada seems entertaining." My voice was devoid of energy. I was mentally organizing my choices. A surprise trip to Illinois took the front stage. "Well, you could at least say it while grinning. Those tickets cost a lot of money, so you should be glad." "Sure, sounds fantastic." To tinker for the evening, I descended to the basement. Our ancient house had one of those floor grates in the corridor. Originally, the first floor was heated by it, allowing warm air to pass from the furnace room. I first made a point not to step on it inadvertently, but with time I grew used to it and forgot about its existence. There is also the phone in the hall. I was quietly working in the basement, thinking about what to do when I heard Karen on a call. "Yes," I handed him the passes. "He remains unsure. I keep telling him he won't love it. I'm not sure exactly. No, I cannot merely advise him against showing up. I want it too, but I also want to stay married later on. I simply need him to allow me some time to enjoy myself over a few weeks. I have earned it, I am due. I do want those weeks with you as well. All fine, let us wait a while. I believe he will show up. All right, darling, I miss you too. For me tonight, write something outstanding." She cut off the call with that. I got a lump in my throat. I'm not naive. I hear cheating and know it's not good. Karen either was thinking about or in an affair. Anything less, and she would still have a lot of work to do explaining. It took me 20 minutes to collect my ideas, but I decided that for now I had to start acting like the kind of liar I've always hated. At least for the moment I had to hide my goals until I had a strategy. In a very loving voice I said, "Karen, I'm heading over to see Jake and give him the good news," as I phoned upstairs. "Oh, that's fantastic, darling. Enjoy," she said. And I was out the basement door exactly like that. I required distance. Seeing Jake was only a pretext. Thinking about it, I knew I needed someone to confide in. And Jake had been my closest buddy from early life. "You're kidding me," Jake responded, not dodging around the issue. "No way, I won't buy it. She would never turn on you, AB." "Well, she's certainly working hard to keep me away from that workshop, and she's calling someone baby, and it's definitely not me." We merely sat there, silent. Most men want from a friend simply sitting with them and sharing the suffering. "You have to talk to her about this, AB. Assuming the worst without knowledge of the truth will not help you through the next few months." "And what is she likely to say?" "When I review the phone records tonight, how much would you want to wager that Frank was not the one she spoke with? Frank she called baby, and Frank she's plotting with wasn't Frank." "I am not laying that bet. What then is your intended course of action?" "I'm going to grab a seat and have a frank conversation. After 25 years of marriage, that's what you do. I'll tell her I love her, let her know I'm offended she doesn't want me to travel with her, and I'll ask her straightforwardly what she's up to, that she doesn't want me there." "Do you suppose she would tell you the truth?" "Nope, but I'll tell her the truth. Even if some of it isn't what she wants to hear. She'll know how much I love her. She will understand that cheating on me will destroy our relationship. She will then most likely try to persuade me that I should simply go fishing since I am seeing things." I stopped just for a moment. "By the way, 1 ticket is for you. I have 2 for a fishing camp in northern Canada in late June." "Nice," Jake said, catching himself. "I mean, friend, here I am to help you." I laughed a little bit. I have always known exactly where his allegiance resides. Before I left for home, we spoke, exchanged ideas, and drank a few beers for 3 hours. I opened up about practically everything. After dinner, asking Karen to come sit with me in the living room. I pushed back a few things. "Sweetheart, I have some quite major worries. About the writer's workshop, I don't think you have been quite open with me. You mentioned it to me only once you had already scheduled a trip, even though I overheard you talking about it with your writer group back in March. I have to admit, I didn't find it funny when you mentioned how common affairs are among brilliant authors. Frank and you have been talking about your vacation, but when I ask, you lie and say it's someone else. You know how I feel about that guy. Then, when you told me you were accepted, you seemed deliberately aloof and discouraged me from participating. Though I am not here, I wanted to partake in this fascinating trip with you. Rather than thinking about it, you set plans for me to be somewhere else without even talking to me. Just committing on my behalf. You seem to be attempting to make sure I won't be around when you're in Illinois. You haven't been quite honest with me, hence I'm beginning to wonder if you have been entirely loyal. AB, I would never be dishonest with you and I have never treated you that way. What has drawn you in? Being your husband, all I want is for you to have fun. That you could believe something like that about me truly hurts. I have no control over my emotions or what sets things off. You know, I love you. Since our first meeting, I have loved you. Nevertheless, I cannot just ignore the concept of treachery. Are you hoping for that, Karen? Is this writer's workshop your haven from our marriage? Update 2. Our dialogue came to an end with that. Not more loving or sympathetic conversation. She started screaming and spent the remainder of the evening either shouting or silently. And for the next week, it was silent. She was trying to get me to turn back down by applying the silence treatment, thereby punishing me. It did not work though. Actually, it reinforced my beliefs solely. But I knew I wasn't moving in this direction and finally I let her think she had achieved success. Not much I could do to stop her from cheating if she intended to do so. The phone call I listened in on even hinted she might have done it already. I finally thanked her for the vacation to Canada, but my attitude stayed dark until the trip was finished. She changed her attitude fast and behaved like a devoted wife to support the behavior she wanted from me once she had what she wanted. She seemed to flick a switch, which just made me more suspicious. When I am the recipient of manipulation, I know it is happening. I asked a colleague who he consulted when he suspected his wife of cheating. The Illinois Writers' Workshop was just 500 meters away and I knew none there. I took his advice and the person he suggested was Illinois-based. I contacted them asking for help. The fact that the session occurred on a state university campus made its location favorable. Although they couldn't take part in the program, the PI's agents could roam the campus and monitor the rooms as needed. The participants would eat in the university cafeterias, go to nearby clubs, and share a big dorm with other students. This gave room for covert monitoring. With modern tools, some of these kids would actually be working for me. Our daughters decided to stay in their colleges for the summer to work in research labs under their professors as the school year was drawing to a conclusion. We were still empty nesters then. I deliberately tried to invite her to dinners made at home and show her around. She appeared to be enjoying everything, hence I began to think I was improving. But every time I told her I loved her, I felt her dismissive I know attitude. The fragments of the puzzle came together gradually. She had merely taken me for granted, not stopped loving me. I knew her safety net was consistent and familiar. She knew she could go away, find thrills, break off our marriage, and I would be waiting when she got back. This insight brought my ideas into line. I knew I couldn't leave things unanswered the day she left. Her shuttle for the airport came as we stood close to the door. I begged and said, "Please don't do anything that could ruin us," tightly gripping her. She flashed me an annoyed glance in answer and retorted, "I'm tired of you not trusting me. We will have a major discussion about this when I get back." She snatched her luggage, kissed me quickly on the cheek and hurried for the shuttle. She left without ever looking back at me. I sensed then that my marriage was about to end. After 25 years and our 2 grown kids, it seemed our relationship was going away with little notice. The private investigator did his work really well. He said they were in an unfamiliar area so they didn't bother covering their acts. Karen has to have taken off her wedding bands on the plane since they vanished off her finger when she arrived at the studio. She claimed freely to be newly divorced, and Frank and my wife started to be inseparable right away. They were together all the time, kissing, holding hands, and behaving as passionate high school students would have. My PI cleverly set a tiny video camera in their dorm hallway. Karen and Frank only used one of their designated rooms, although each had one. Sometimes her chamber, sometimes his, but always they stayed late together. Although I knew what was happening in those shared dorm rooms, my PI and his crew went to considerable measures to verify my suspicions. Frank and my wife left early one evening before it was dark. 2 agents, looking like normal college students, sat against the corridor wall and surreptitiously slipped a tiny fisheye camera under the door. Frank was seen in action for 20 minutes using this gadget. The video quality was shockingly clear, and he clearly hadn't used protection when he finished. That for me was the last straw. I was clearly done with this marriage. Anything else the team found served only as more proof to support my position. Regular updates from my private investigator kept me informed, but after that first week her future was obvious and my decision was taken. Beginning the early days of her workshop, I spent time implementing my plan. I wanted to be virtually invisible, almost ghostly. I would have vanished and there would be no turning back. No falsehoods, no ultimatums, no protracted negotiations, explanations, justifications, or attempts at reconciliation when she got back. The sole outcome would be divorce. My marriage was about to fall apart. Though it does not fade fast, what is love without trust? An unfaithful wife cannot define a future. Some could contend that my answer was weak. They could advise she deserves horrible humiliation, physical punishment, and total poverty. Ultimately though, the law would forbid me from pursuing any of that, and I had no intention of ruining the rest of my life by seeking such cruel revenge on my adulterous wife and her lover. Eliminating the one thing she always depended on, the consistent presence that comforted, encouraged, uplifted and inspired her, would be my payback. I was walking away from myself. Frank lacked suitability for a catch. Long term, he was unable to meet her needs. Where would a 50-year-old divorced mother find emotional stability and love? I not give a damn. She no longer would be of interest to me. My private investigator would bring me more images, recordings, and proof of treachery by the person who promised me allegiance above all else every few days. The pictures and videos in the reports were very upsetting to view. The reports themselves were challenging to read. Especially when they covered me, the audio recordings were the toughest to handle. He is always emailing me about the fish he is catching and how incredible it is up there. Nearly every day he thanks me. She laughs. Frank joined in the laughing. He's clueless. You escape from his irritation by keeping him in the dark and treating him like a mushroom. He could as well have fun right now. I'll face that geek about his charges when I get back. How dare he continually charge me of cheating? But you're momentarily straying from our marriage, correct, beautiful? Alternatively, is another woman sleeping next night on my bed? She laughed at that, really. Well, I won't put up with that even if he may be onto something. Damn it, I'm a writer. His circuits and computer lingo are holding me back with their millimeters and micro thingamajigs. About huge ideas, what does he know? Update 3. As long as my existence stayed linked to hers, none of the several ways I considered for retribution would really satisfy me. One decision remained, and I started the process of separating from her. I explained everything honestly to my supervisor. Having gone through something like this personally not so long ago, he could appreciate it. He set up a transfer for me to show up at Portland, Maine, our corporate office. I thought the concept was interesting. I knew the folks there were professional, competent, and I liked their company. I found attractions in the town and the state as well. To get half of the furniture and all of my personal stuff up north, I booked movers. I checked that my automobile was in good condition for the trip, then spoke with a lawyer to start the divorce process. Regarding money problems, Karen had a retirement account and her own insurance. I made my daughters the beneficiaries and deleted her name from every one of my possessions. For no alimony, I signed a quitclaim deed turning the house over to her. She would keep her automobile but have to deal with her own insurance. Keeping my plans understated, I intended to handle credit cards and bank accounts closer to the finish. From that point ahead, I concentrated on strengthening my will. I meant to call her to show my love and to find out how the workshop was going. Hearing her lies would help me to get more convinced that my behavior was justified. She didn't let down anyone. She reacted with fervor, said her love, and went out to dinner in less than 2 minutes. Later on, my private investigator told me Frank was right next to her, mocking gestures and knowing glances, which just confirmed my choice. She clearly saw the matter as a joke, which validated my direction in life. Later on, I decided to text her instead of calling since I wasn't sure I could control my feelings over the phone. Though in reality I sent Jake and his wife on such vacations, I would tell her about great fishing excursions. They enjoyed themselves thoroughly. Regarding his marriage, Jake made a smart decision. They promised to see me and I did pay them a farewell visit before I left. Her 6-week workshop was ending, and I finished my last assignments. I put a for sale sign from a buddy who works as a real estate agent in the front yard. She was ignorant of that aspect, but I couldn't really sell the house without her permission, especially since I had already transferred ownership to her. Her first sight upon returning home would be the sign. To help the house seem less like a house, I changed the locks. I created a copy of the PI's report and chose specific pictures from her trip, including graphic stills from the video shot taken under Frank's door. To let her know she had been found out, I left all of this on the dining room table. The movers had already relocated most of my stuff. They would keep it until I needed it. I packed just 2 pieces of luggage, a briefcase, a laptop, and a guitar. I absolutely had to have my guitar. Something so valuable could not be trusted to anybody else. Frank could be engaged with my wife, but I loved my guitar very much. Knowing she wouldn't be back until late that evening, my first thought was to leave the next morning. I would be long gone when she showed up. But the evening before I changed my mind. She could only wait and worry. I wanted her to feel the suffering right away. Along with the words divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you, I emailed her 3 well-selected pictures of her with Frank. I chose one picture when they were almost close on the dance floor, obviously revealing she wasn't sporting her engagement and wedding rings. The second picture caught them holding hands as they entered his dorm room. The third was a crisp face-clear screenshot from the dorm room footage. She would see these pictures, and I hoped it would ruin her last beautiful night with Frank as they furiously looked for cameras that had already been taken down. Then I turned off my phone. Leaving the house our family had lived in for many years was a mix of grief, uncertainty, and newly acquired independence. All at once it seemed like the most difficult, uncertain, and freeing event of my life. My wife basically disappeared from my life. Though I hadn't personally caused it, it seemed as though she had died, not knowing the when or the why. The woman looking like my wife was someone I knew nothing about and I wanted no contact with. I was starting over and had no idea where I might be headed. Among the great loss, there was an unusual sense of emancipation. If only momentarily, the weight of dishonesty, treachery, and belittlement was offloaded from my shoulders. The sole expense was half of my life now unreachable. Late, but my mind was racing, so I drove almost 100 miles down the peaceful highway lost in contemplation till I came to a hotel for the evening. I was hoping for a real local breakfast restaurant, not for a chain motel. I searched for something real. I eventually found it and enjoyed what might be my final dish of grits for some time. My perspective changed and I started to rethink my path to Maine as I ate those grits. This signaled the beginning of my new life, and I had a long journey ahead. I had a 2-week window before employment began, so even if I could speed up my trip to Maine, fleeing my troubles, why accelerate? I needed time to gather my ideas, process her treachery and let the past go. I decided to go gradually. Enjoying the landscape on my northward drive and interacting with every state and its people as I passed through. My old life would give way to my new one this week. To be ready for a fresh start and clear myself of the ugly and blunders of my past, I meant to nurture my senses, including my taste buds. Wandering about Williamsburg among the summer throngs, the rest of the day was lost. I investigated the abilities of talented craftsmen and artists. I found somewhere to stay even though I had no reservation. My thoughts returned to my failing marriage only after a small dinner and settling in for the evening. She was probably going home about that time. Seeing the for sale sign on the front yard and knowing her keys wouldn't open the door, I wondered how she would respond. I traveled north along the winding roads toward Annapolis, Maryland's capital, the following day. Along Virginia's ancestral rivers, the York, Rappahannock and Potomac, which go into the Chesapeake Bay, I passed through little villages and old estates. Ahead, there was one road stretch headed toward my destiny. I would follow that meandering road, which led me from betrayal to a new chapter in my life. Update 4. At last turned on my cell phone, I sat in my hotel room in downtown Annapolis. It was, predictably, full with many missed calls, emails, and text messages. A few came from friends, most of them came from Karen. Despite it being difficult, I read and listened to every one of them. That was a step that was absolutely vital. Indeed, Karen was trying to persuade me that things were not as they seemed at first. She sent those texts from Illinois before going back home, then saw the remainder of the pictures and perused the PI's report. My pals were letting me know, meanwhile, that Karen was trying to find me by contacting everyone. She was looking in all the wrong places, little knowing it. Although Jake and his wife knew, I decided to deliberately keep the rest in the dark. Once I had been established, I would let them know. I knew immediately that I could not spend eternity ghostly. 2 calls from my girls started to worry me. Karen had gotten in touch with them trying to track me. As I wanted to do it in person, I had deliberately not notified them about my choice to leave their mother. I gently explained the matter to my daughters, though, since I cannot let them worry. Their mother could do such a thing, which infuriated them and made it difficult for them to believe. For this reason, I emailed them the identical images I had shown Karen the evening I left home together with the PI's report. They promised then not to tell their mother about my activities. One more missed call. My attorney told me Karen had been formally served with divorce papers. She knew now that I intended business. Frank's wife had also got a whole set of pictures, films, and audio recordings from his 6-week program. For Frank, that was a karma dosage. Driving over northern Maryland on the 3rd day of my trip, I eventually arrived at New Jersey. Well, not exactly with much enthusiasm. I entered New Jersey but stopped just before I arrived in Connecticut. Once in Connecticut, I spent several hours investigating some coastal historic towns. Though I had no particular objective, the architecture was so different from what I was accustomed to in North Carolina that I felt a strong sensation of being in a new place, both physically and emotionally. And avoided telling the authorities, but I spent an hour in Groton looking for as many submarines as I could. Those blackfish are quite stealthful. Looking along the coast, I was reminded that those nuclear submarines cut a hole in the hull to refuel the reactor and subsequently weld the hull back together. Was that another way to describe my circumstances? Could the first step in rejuvenating my life be Karen's treachery, which ripped a hole in my heart? Once I started down a new path, could I heal myself? The next day when I got up, I knew it would be the toughest day thus far. Following a filling breakfast of eggs, bacon, bread and a robust cup of black coffee, I prepared myself for a challenging chat with my eldest daughter, Claire, at Brown. The drive there took little time, and I was at her dorm about late morning. We agreed to postpone our talk a little so she could act happy for an hour or two. She showed me around the university, then brought me to the cafeteria, where she met her friends. These were exactly the kind of young men and women I had hoped she would surround herself with, friendly, attentive, and apparently supportive. I pulled Claire's roommate aside on our way out and told her Claire had a difficult day. She was supposed to watch my daughter. "Of sure, Mr. Baker," she said. "She shared it with us last night. Here among us are all her supporters." Yes, my daughter had made sensible friend choices. Claire and I stayed in her dorm room talking for hours. I showed her pictures and played audio recordings I never would have imagined to expose to one of my kids. Her feelings swung from grief to rage. "Mom would do that is beyond unbelievable. Is she the same person who raised us at all? She has become what kind of nasty person?" Though I could relate to her, at that moment I had to step in. "Claire is your mother whatever she does. And keep in mind that I, not you, she has betrayed." "Sorry, Dad, but she broke my soul family. I am definitely affected by this." I couldn't contradict that. We kept talking all afternoon, and I showed her my ideas. I urged her to get her friends together, and we had dinner at the greatest restaurant in town, or at least the one within my means. Everyone seems to have delighted in a departure from the standard dining hall cuisine. I related tales of my own college eating experiences, and I believe it helped them to see their own circumstances in a fresh light. That night I remained at a nearby hotel. The next morning I had breakfast with Claire, hugged her tearfully, and then traveled north to repeat the procedure. Claire has to have told Denise, as her response was far more under control than that of her older sister. Though less astonished, there remained dissatisfaction and resentment. She asked to view the supporting materials. I showed her. Her mother called coincidentally as we were chatting, and I sent her the universal sign for, "No, I'm not here." I shook my head, waved wildly, and copied a throat-cutting action. She knew, Denise was always the family's more level-headed member. She then accomplished something I had never seen before. She said, "Dad phoned yesterday night. Did he not? Is it true you have evolved into a lady who lies about cheating on her husband and engages in multiple partner involvement?" I stunned myself. Though at the same time I couldn't dispute the truth in her remarks, I wanted to chastise her for talking to her mother like that. "You heard, Mom. You stayed 6 weeks helping someone else while Dad was alone at home. Mom, was it well worth it? Was it worth going without your spouse?" Really, my daughter uses words rather brilliantly. Note to self, stay off her negative side. Not much more ground to cover. Denise told me that although her mother was primarily in tears and trying to provide apologies, my daughter was not buying any of it. Not far from the university, I later brought Denise and her companions to a Thai restaurant named the Elephant Walk. Like her sister, Denise had selected her friends deliberately, and dinner was a nice gathering. One of her friends stated, "Mr. Baker, Denise told us about what you're going through. On our way back to campus. Last night, she was rather agitated. We helped her. Perhaps you could come back here and we will treat you to the cafeteria." That made the group giggle. I mean, really, maybe we can find a better place than that. This set off more chuckles, and we laughed all the way back to her dorm. After finding a place to rest for the evening, I had breakfast with my daughter in the morning, and on the 7th day of my trip I kept on going northward. I left Boston and arrived barely 2 hours south of Portland. My priorities now were my girls rather than my soon-to-be ex-wife. I couldn't be prouder of them. They were becoming strong, moral young women. I came to see they would negotiate the approaching divorce more skillfully than I had imagined. Leaving these two incredible jewels behind with no idea of when I will see them again presented a struggle on this day. As it happens, my concerns were unfounded. Not ready to face the realities of beginning my new life just yet, so when I arrived at Portsmouth, New Hampshire, I turned west and headed for the Presidential Range and the White Mountains. I arrived in the White Mountains and ascended Mount Washington via the Cog Railway. Feeling the chilly Arctic winds that seemed out of place in the early days of August, I finally sensed a rebirth inside myself as I stood there gazing across the breadth to the lesser peaks of the White Mountains and surveyed the lush pine trees below. Though alone, at least I was tall. I had changed, shedding the obligations and regrets of my previous existence. I was then ready to welcome the fresh chapter and all its possibilities. Standing on higher ground, I was ready to start a different trip. Everything I could have wanted was ahead. I placed a real maple syrup-topped pancake order the next morning. Right now I was in maple syrup country. Years to come would find me in the same surroundings. Restless and ready, I got back into my car and headed for Portland. Arriving in the middle of the afternoon, I chose to follow up with my new manager to let them know I'd arrived. About half of the office personnel knew me already, so I was greeted warmly. It was comforting. Those were the first happy, straightforward faces I had seen in a week. Henry, my new manager, got the staff assembled for introductions. I took a brief tour of the company, but not before everyone decided where we would all eat dinner. I thought it would be a downtown restaurant, but to my astonishment we found ourselves grilling steaks in Henry's place with all the accompaniments. Though I should have savored lobster in Maine, there was no hurry for it. This was more about getting back into society and savoring some really delicious steaks and quite exceptional local beer. They asked about my story. What was a guy from the South doing uprooting his life and moving to Maine at this point? I thereafter told my story. I left off the graphic elements but gave enough for them to grasp. I might get a bit short-tempered in the next few weeks, I said at closing. Though I have a lot to process, it is not my usual attitude. If I act out, perhaps you would call me out and advise me to chill off. Now and then I could use some mild pushback. Every man put his arm around my shoulder. Every woman present unexpectedly gave me a peck on the cheek. All they said, "AB," was, "We're here for you." All they needed to say. Later that evening, I turned on my cell phone once more after getting inside my hotel room. One of each of my daughters had sent encouraging notes. I had gotten perhaps 8 or 10 extra texts from the young men and women who loved the dinner and wanted me to know they would be there for my girls, so they must have shared my number with their friends. Those young people are really amazing. Many friends kept reaching out, so I decided to get in touch with all of them and explain the circumstances so they can stop worrying. I kept my whereabouts secret, that would come later. I just explained why I had left. Though at first they were reluctant to believe it, I sent them the same 3 pictures I had sent Karen and told them I had even more damning evidence should they require more proof. I considered it, but really I couldn't think of one way to keep her from making her own decisions. Let the truth out in due course. I had tried and it had not worked. Every one of them sent me loving notes and encouragement. I told them I would keep in touch. My ideas of becoming a ghost were clearly wishful thinking. Too many people cared about me, and that is undoubtedly a good thing. I listened to the missed calls while reading over Karen's last text messages. She came clean eventually and admitted, although her confession was laced with odd outbursts of wrath. She found me one way or another responsible for her behavior and for all that had happened. That is simply ludicrous. I texted her saying I would call her about noon the next day. It has to happen sooner or later. Let's say the talk was not at all fulfilling. She moved from denial to remorse to blame. She apologized. Over her, Frank had great influence. Her suffocating me was a result. I worked too much, hence I was at fault. She even dared to assert that between them, they were merely playing about. Nothing major happened. When she tried to persuade me she was merely looking for her creative inspiration, I almost started laughing. She even accused me of turning our girls against her, as if her own behavior hadn't achieved that without my help. When she finally stopped talking, I laid it out for her quite simply. She had plotted with Frank to turn on me, fought my attempts to mend our relationship, carried out the betrayal, and now she was dealing with fallout. The whys lost importance to me now. She was still begging her case and sobbing when I hung up. I was finished with her. Not turning back, I knew too much. Conveniently near the office, I found a basic but pleasant 2-bedroom apartment in an older building. Originally considering it as a temporary situation, I believed I could utilize the walking exercise but soon changed my viewpoint. Living simply in town, avoiding the added chores that come with owning a house, and having a little coastal cottage for weekends sounded like a wonderful idea. Then I considered why I should stop at a cottage. My seaside escape may be a yacht I purchase, kept parked in the harbor. Early October arrived by the time I worked through all of this. Though I had intended to live alone, it has not turned out that way. Actually, I spend more time with my daughters right now than I did in Raleigh. Every month they arrange a weekend trip, usually accompanied by friends. My apartment is alive during those 36 hours, and I generally treat them to dinner. Though I miss them right away, I do yearn for the silence once they are gone. A handful of my friends have visited and the others intend to visit when the weather is better. Surprisingly, though I live alone, I am not lonely. Along with all my travels, I have acquired new pals at work. The sailing community is vibrant and welcoming. I have met interesting women. I will, however, keep polite and well-mannered until the divorce is official. Karen still gets in touch with me even if the divorce will be formal soon. She would rather minimize the circumstances and never really stones. She says simply, everyone does it, it has no significance at all. It does though. The intimacy has weight, hence the dishonesty and manipulation are much more important. Though people evolve and I no longer see the use in conveying this to her. To be honest, my life is not quite apart from hers. Complete dissociation is not likely given 2 daughters and numerous mutual connections. Still, I no longer live with the everyday suffering of rejection and betrayal 600 miles separating us. Up until I was no longer living in hers, she was the focal point of my life. I am now building my own future and walking my own road. A number of favorable results came from the circumstance. To start with, I actually adore living up here. Though it's a bit of a shock, I'm experiencing my first Maine winter. If others can do it, so can I. Early darkness in this area actually makes indoor events seem cozier and more brilliant. I'm excited about spring when I can work on splicing lines and applying varnish because I started looking for a boat and came upon a spot with moorings not too far from town. The people are real, the microbreweries are excellent, and the neighborhood restaurants are decent. There is a range of music, dances to learn, like contra dancing, and I am still finding surprises. After all, I think life will go out for me. Is my heart at last healed? Not yet, but I have hope for the better life that is ahead since time has a way of curing hurts. Oh, and as a side note, Frank's wife appears to be as traditional as I am. She divorced him and kicked him out the house. Even worse is what is involved here. Frank and Karen are still unpublished. Am I the asshole for hating my older daughter for throwing a forbidden party that led to my younger daughter was assaulted by 4 men? First of all, I am a widow with 3 children, but in this essay I will be more focused on Leah, 14, and Maya, 18. 4 guys back in December sexually assaulted Leah. Maya organized a party when I was working the night shift, and 4 of the lads that were there attacked Leah. Said the least, it has been terrible. Leah quit cheering and has lost all of her energy. She also chose to skip her first year by just finishing her classes online. She only wears my late husband's hoodies all day and sleeps in my room now, with me. As a mother, I feel so powerless as I have no idea how I could support her. Many facts came out about Maya's involvement in this over the research. She did not set up her little sister, but I believe she mistreated her greatly. All of this might have been avoided if she only followed my guidelines. I never approved of a party. Before you people argue, well, you're her mother, it's not her job to watch your kid. The issue is, it was her job. She left Leah under supervision. To look after her sister while I work evenings, I pay her really nicely. We had reached an arrangement years ago. Leah is not in any sense special needs. Maya just asked that she make sure her sister finishes her schoolwork and gets to bed at a respectable time. Maya herself invited the guys that attacked Leah. She knew personally that they belonged to gangs and that she had no concern. Rather, what I discovered in this research is Leah was not interested when she sought to be with one of these boys. Trying to entice Leah to kiss him, this lad was pestering her all night. Leah got enough and headed to her room. That same boy and his buddies went up to my daughter's room and sexually assaulted her after Maya left the house to visit McDonald's. The worst aspect of this is that partygoers assumed a couple was fighting upstairs when she started screaming and did nothing. Not knowing what transpired till the party ended the next morning. For her and most likely the worst experience as a parent, having her do a rape kit traumatizing her. She tested positive for a treatable STD several weeks later as well. Ever since, my baby has been somewhat broken. Leah finds it quite difficult right now even if they did acquire those males and all 4 entered a guilty plea since they had evidence on their phones. Maya has been regretful, on the other side, and Leah has no resentment toward her and does not hold her responsible. She still adores her sister. I'm not sure why though. I've been really trying to forgive Maya but I can't. I am so furious at her. I can't even look at her right now without wishing to snap. Her prom falls next weekend. I really couldn't give a damn less. She approaches me to have talks, but I find it difficult to express any enthusiasm in them. I love my kid. I do not hate her right now. Only I have a deep detest for her. I have been reading self-help books in search of appropriate ways to handle this. I feel as though in life I cannot be honest with anyone about this. As a mother, I suppose this may be a call for help. Edit. I value all of your comments. Maya still watches Leah, which is the most often asked question I'm seeing. Hell no is the response here. I no longer trust her. It may take years to recover. Right now I'm on a break. Leah is not in treatment either right now. She told me she wouldn't be ready for it. She might be amenable to it once the sentence is over. Maya is in therapy as well, but she misses many of the visits. I'm in therapy as well, and it has helped me not want to snap at Maya and stay cool under pressure. Sending Maya to my parents' house for a little while to gain some separation from her is the one piece of advice I am most strongly contemplating though. Sorry, fast second edit. To my understanding, Maya isn't in a gang for the people wondering about that. Her most I have seen is smoking some cannabis and vaping. I'm also leaning toward Maya really being plain negligent that night since I also don't want to believe Maya would ever set her sister to be brutally attacked. Furthermore, I believe it would have surfaced in the research if Leah had purposefully set up herself. The other 3 were mature men. The lad Maya was trying to arrange Leah for was 17 at the time. He's 18 today. Update: Maya's arrest the evening Leah attacked was rather straightforward. Her charges were 2 misdemeanors and felony child endangerment. She paid a $2,000 fine, 60 hours of community service, and 3 years of probation. The court was rather friendly to her. I grabbed her car as well. But following this update, I might have ought to have punished her more severely. Turning now back to the update, TLDR at the bottom Thursday afternoon Maya and I got into a fight. Leah came to me virtually agitated and on the edge of tears after 5 people messaged her that day offering sympathies for her attack. Leah has been quite clear, she wants nobody she knows to know she was attacked. After more research, it comes out Maya told a group chat of 27 individuals Leah was the victim. Leah told me she feels ashamed and she can never return to school next year. I naturally then went to confront Maya about it. I was overreacting, she insisted, and Leah was acting dramatically. She did not see the problem when I tried to use reason to explain how she mistreated her sister. She interrupted mid-lecture and exclaimed, "Jesus Christ, Mom, you need to let her deal with this instead of always leaping to her defense. Leah is not unique among women everywhere who experience rape. At least they don't define their personality like she does entirely. She's fine as well. Last night, I actually listened in on her on the phone chatting to a lad. It suddenly clicked for me at that instant when I saw her mask slip and she was not really regretful at all. I answered, "Pack your," saying she would be living with my parents until I let her back. She did exactly that. However, Maya sent a text to meet her at her therapist session later that day the next morning. Looking back, I wish I had never gone since her therapist only saw her point of view during most of the visit. Maya opened up at the beginning of the appointment apologizing and outlining her reasoning for telling her pals. She was venting, hence she didn't consider it as a major issue since Leah seems good these days and the public case that was in the news is public. Leah lists as a Jane Doe and has no name, but I digress. We then descended into the smallest details of everything. Maya told me in front of the therapist that she feels emotionally abandoned by me and that I never seemed to care about her trauma in the scenario, which for her, meant having to stay in jail for a weekend and losing one of Leah's literal rapist buddies. Though I wish I could be laughing, I am dead serious. We discussed that for 30 minutes first. Given their father is no longer with us, her therapist said I should strive more to be Maya's mother and guilt-tripped me for not being more emotionally present for her. Though I am a terrible parent, I do not want to be emotionally present for Maya if it means supporting her and gassing over the relationship of the person who destroyed her sister's life. Maya has been telling Leah that the therapist was on one, particularly because she continued referring to what occurred to Leah as an accident or stating Leah seems happier these days. Leah actually still scores fairly low on mental health assessments yet is rather physically high on antidepressants. Feel free to skip over the next paragraph if I simply had an outburst since I become quite graphic here and have a major trigger warning. I think it's kind of nasty that the two of you are ignoring Leah's trauma in all of this and keep referring to it as an accident, I told Maya and her therapist. Your sister was in the hospital suffering from something your friend did. You spent a weekend in jail. Ironically enough, if you ever listen to Leah, she has said that your friend was the most hostile toward her throughout the attack and was the source of most of her injuries, including strangling her. So for you both to sit here and criticize me for not caring that you lost your friend due to something horrible your friend did to your sister is just nasty. Right now, my main regret is helping you choose a lawyer. I ought to have let you figure it out for yourself and perish in that jail. At this time Maya began crying in the office, claiming it unfair that I held her responsible for Leah's fate. Leah kept hovering near to her at the party, so she told me the only thing she was attempting to do was get Leah out of her shell. Interjecting suddenly, the therapist asks Maya, "How did Leah respond to you when you apologized?" In such a protective way, Maya responds, "Apologize for what? I did not sexually harass her." When the therapist mentioned it, even she was startled, and at that moment I was startled and at that moment I had heard enough. I got to stand, raise my hands and go. This was Friday afternoon. I haven't seen Maya since then. Maya has been messaging and calling me, pleading to come home so she might apologize to Leah and me, but at this point I'm not sure. I never imagined I would be the parent who would have no contact with my kid, but I'm not sure whether I could live around her. She is not repentant about what happened. I cannot trust her. Part of me wants to try to make it work for Leah since she asked yesterday if she destroyed our family, and it crushed my heart. Leah adores and looks up to Maya. I doubt she can understand at this point that Maya also failed her. I simply find myself caught. Tell me if I'm wrong for not grasping Maya though. I apologize for the not very cheerful update. I should thus say what happened that morning. By now I go home from work at 8:30 a.m., and my house was wrecked and several of Maya's buddies were still there. Of course, I argued with Maya a little regarding party planning. When I checked on Leah later, she was not in her room but her linens were bloody. Maybe it was the time of the month and she was sleeping or washing in my bed. But as I looked about my room, she was nowhere. When I started phoning Leah, her phone did ring. I heard it emanate from my closet. It's a walk-in, and I observed her cocoon-like blanket-covered state. She wasn't awake when I shook her to get her going. When I tried to untuck her, I discovered abrasions around her neck and bleeding on her scalp. I began yelling for someone to dial 911. Leah started crying when she started to sort of wake up in the ambulance. Maya's friend raped her, and she first told me she couldn't get up since she was in so much pain. I honestly didn't care about Maya at that time when the cops and ambulance arrived. I advised her to be truthful with the cops and she ought to be okay. I knew nothing as I know today. They then drove her to the station where the cops questioned her. Leah's medical report revealed what had transpired, hence they chose to accuse her with child endangerment. When they told Maya what happened to Leah, I did not observe her response. I considered it to be a lovely moment nevertheless when she hugged Leah once she was released from jail. From that period, the only red flag that jumps out to me is Maya's partial lack of cooperation about the distribution of the names. She claims she forgot. Fortunately, DNA from Leah in the crime scene. All 4 of Leah's rapists were already in the system for earlier offenses, one even on probation, so they were readily found. Following that was a domino effect. My son is my oldest. He married a month before things fell apart, and I wanted him to savor the honeymoon period with his wife, so I didn't want to draw him in too much about Maya. His wife is quite helpful, and she takes Leah all the time for sleepovers, or just to get her out of the house. Although I know I'm not alone in dealing with this, my daughter F14 has been quite understandably depressed. In 4 years, at her early age, she experienced 2 horrific events. She lost her dad 4 years ago and suffered sexual assault back in December. I recall feeling as though the world was against me when I was 14, with both of my parents on my side and having never experienced an assault. I find it incomprehensible what she is going through right now. I asked her if she was okay when I heard her sobbing in the bathroom this morning. She said promptly she was okay. It just makes me feel so powerless as her mother, as I am unable to assist her or alleviate any of her suffering. Since both of my parents are still living and I have never been sexually molested, I cannot even completely identify with her. Since I cannot advise her and assist her with the current circumstances, I feel like I'm a bad mother. As a mother, I believe I should know everything. Unfortunately, I do not. I feel like 99.9% of the time I'm not sure what I'm talking about, hence every time I try to comfort her she most likely wonders, what is this woman talking about? Please leave some useful advice if any other mothers can relate. 3 children of mine are M24, F18, and F14. 4 years ago, COVID claimed the late husband quite unexpectedly. He lacked a will, but our life insurance policy paid a $360,000 death benefit. As his wife, I paid the whole cost. I chose to split the money 4 ways. I would get $120,000 and each of my 3 children would get $80,000. Since my kids were minors at the time, I promised them they could access their whole amount when they reached 18. Still, I would let them utilize some of their portion if they ever wanted to do something expensive. I looked after most of their requirements. I handed my son his portion immediately away as he was over 18. This was a verbal commitment, and I meant to follow through exactly. But recently, my middle daughter, let's call her M, was jailed in December for child endangerment after brutally mistreating her little sister, which resulted in something terrible happening under her care. She left roughly $65,000 after deducting some of her $80,000 for attorney and court fees. Fast forward to now, and my youngest kid is still somewhat challenged. She is on a high dosage of antidepressants and shows quite poor on mental health assessments during her visits. She usually jokes that she would be sent to a psych facility if she told the doctors or us how she really feels. Maya is no longer living with us. She is staying with my parents for now, as I felt her presence was causing more damage than benefit to her sister. She has been pleading with me, nevertheless, to have the money I promised once she graduated. I have not been eager to do so. Familiar with the circumstances, my sister thinks Maya doesn't deserve the money and I should use it to keep home longer with my younger son, who will be alone throughout the day once I get back to work. Given my youngest's poor mental health and school being closed, I'm quite concerned about her. Maya is headed to start college, and I know most of the money would go toward that. Still, I am quite furious with Maya for the suffering she brought about for her sister. Making this choice is proving difficult for me. So supposing I retained her inheritance. Edit. Although I wasn't expecting so many comments, I am reading over all of them. I am conflicted since I honestly have no idea what my spouse would say if he were here. Part of me wants to believe he would really say to give Maya the money so she could attend college since he valued education highly. Another side of me, too, knows that he would be far more harsh than I am and maybe disown Leah completely if he had known the whole truth about what happened to her. I'm conflicted as it's difficult to project what he would have desired. Update 2. Leah, my 14-year-old daughter, has been battling the fallout from the horrific act she went through last December. For us, this past week has been particularly challenging. Last Tuesday everything began when a sheriff and another officer paid us a visit. One of the persons in charge of what happened to Leah, the person who videotaped the incident, had uploaded the footage to a group and now it's floating on some dark websites. Recorded in Leah's room, the footage included recognizable artifacts indicating her school attendance. When I heard this, I was crushed. The way Leah responded startled me. She exhibited little emotional expression or tears. She just shrugged and murmured, "I figured," then sat there silently. Although the officials informed us that it is unusual for offenders to come back in these kinds of circumstances, they felt obliged to let us know for safety concerns. Leah returned appearing as though nothing had occurred, almost too happy after they departed. She dodged the subject, although I tried many times to discuss it. This conduct persisted all week until she abruptly said she wanted to read her victim impact statement herself in court instead of allowing the prosecutor to do it. She believed that, lacking a trial, only the charges against those accountable were known, not the whole truth of what she went through. Her comment is a thorough narrative of that terrible night, but she has not been able to read it to me in whole, as every time she tries she starts to cry. I only witnessed her really expressing her emotions at that one moment. Leah seemed especially happy all week until Saturday night and noted sleeping early, about 8 p.m. until I got a call from one of Leah's best friend's mother. I gave it little thought. Leah's last message to her daughter, a note expressing love and requesting her to check on her, worried her. Leah had tried to overdose on Zizquil when I hurried to her room. Knowing she would recover as a nurse, it broke my heart to see her waking in the hospital. She shrieked, "Why couldn't you just let me die? Mom, I want to pass. Feeling their hands on me wears me out. I want it to stop now. Please allow me to pass away." To help her relax, they had to knock her out. Leah was then put under a 72-hour psychiatric hold and then moved to a mental health hospital surrounded by peers her age. Leah has been suffering, particularly with a male staff member, maybe a psychiatrist, who she claims has been asking intrusive questions about her personal life, making her uncomfortable. The staff advised staying longer than the first hold. Leah seems distant, and staff members told me she is not joining in group activities. They even suggested limiting her access to me, but I asked them to hold off on putting such policies into effect. Given Leah's seeming trouble adjusting, I'm not sure if the inpatient environment we have now is appropriate. Her cry for her life to end haunts me still. It is a concept I cannot get rid of. Leah's buddy sent further information Leah had concealed from me. There is a nasty story going around that Leah had voluntarily engaged in something dangerous, and the cops were only involved out of shame. Young people can be rather nasty. Regarding my second daughter, Maya, 18, I haven't chatted with her in 2 weeks. I recently found, though, why Leah feels obligated to her. I discovered unsuitable texts on Leah's phone 2 years ago between her and Maya's ex-boyfriend. Saying Leah was much prettier and that he loved her yet inexperienced, he showed affection for her and even likened her to Maya. Maya was enraged and broke off with me when I told her, but she thought Leah had betrayed her by seeing her boyfriend. Even though Leah was just 12 at the time and her boyfriend was 17. Maya avoided Leah for 3 months following, and even with Leah's apologies, Maya still harbors resentment. Leah feels guilty about hurting their friendship with this episode. I'm sharing this to get it off my plate. I have kept these battles inside our family to guard my girls, but I am tired from always facing fresh difficulties and not sure how to heal them. I now find myself in the challenging role of determining Leah's mental readiness to testify at the sentencing for her abuser, though I wonder if she is in a stable enough position to manage a possibly traumatic occurrence, particularly since these guys genuinely have character witnesses. I worry she will blame me for this decision. Update 3. Additional details regarding the psychiatrist. Leah and I discussed what the psychiatrist said to make her uncomfortable more specifically. She informed me they made her sit down one-on-one to debrief why she was there and what was triggering these ideas when I left. She told him about the attack and opened up to him. But he wanted to know whether this was her sole sexual encounter. Leah answered yes, but he kept challenging her as if he didn't believe her, asking things like, "You can tell me if it wasn't your only experience. I am not going to inform your mother." Leah had to remind him again several times that it was her sole experience. He next inquired about her sexuality and whether she still found guys appealing. Leah claims she does not now give relationships any thought. She said she felt uneasy about him probing her sex life so much when they were alone in a room with the door closed. Although the psychiatrist might have been performing his duties, I would not accuse him of being improper. Rather, I believe he ought to have had a female staff member there or probe such issues. Before they met, he ought to have seen her chart. Update 4, back here with a much-awaited update. This runs long. TLDR at the bottom. Though much has happened, I will begin with something encouraging. Leah began treatment following her sentence, and she has been sharing good things about it. She said it was relieving not having to discuss the assault straightforwardly with her therapist. Her therapist recommended some EMDR sessions as well. Her first one is set for next week. Her general doctor advised she start birth control and cleared her to begin cheering once more should she so wish. I'm not sure about it, as I know how much it can affect mental health and I want not to undo any advancement. We also moved into our new rental, and I let Leah pick a kitten, her baby. Leah always carries the cat with her, so I hardly see it since we bought it. To aid Leah in her recovery process, we had to toss most of her old furnishings. She used to like the things I used to, but now she wants the minimum color. I was attempting to show her the Pinterest room of her dreams. It is still being worked on. She currently boasts a boyfriend as well. Out on the 4th, he invited her. He is age appropriate, and I have known the child since I grew up with his dad, so I know he comes from a decent home. Leah appears like she could be developing codependency on him, which worries me the only thing. He is on FaceTime with us if he is not at our house. She wants him to tag along every time we go out. This has been happening since he asked her out formally. As Maya moved out, I would say it's been like this. Yet I'm not very concerned as I believe it's only like this now since it's summer and a fresh relationship. She seemed at first to be happy for the occasion. My last post drew a lot of critical comments as I wasn't informing my kid all the specifics or moving quickly enough. Though I almost wanted not to share this, I want to start by noting that I know my children and they know me. Timing is something I respect personally. I wanted to be sure I had facts, not presumptions, before I spoke with my other children. I knew in my heart that I tried my best to make my daughter answerable for her acts. I wanted to arrange a meeting with the detective who questioned Maya to tell him everything. The detective informed me he investigated Maya but lacked sufficient proof when we met. It wasn't enough to accuse her, even with all I told him. So he could only accuse her of child endangerment for leaving a juvenile she was supposed to be supervising in a house with a documented sex offender. He soothed me though, and confirmed what I had thought. He also informed me Leah reportedly spent almost 2 hours being assaulted twice by 2 of the suspects. Maya was arrested as she never went upstairs to see Leah and showed no sympathy during questioning. He also mentioned that he has looked into several similar cases, but this case troubled him since so many onlookers realized something sinister may be occurring but did not act. He told me to bear that in mind. Everyone failed Leah, not only Maya. Before the sentencing, I visited with my son and his wife. More dissatisfied than offended was his attitude. Though he knew something was amiss, he assumed Maya wouldn't act purposefully. My son and daughter-in-law told me they always believed Leah made Maya jealous or threatened. When Leah removed her braces, my son observed that she started to grow into her appearance, drawing greater interest from Maya's friends. Leah was the nice sibling amongst the two. According to my daughter-in-law, she personally saw this during the bridesmaid dress fitting. Maya attacked Leah instead of complimenting her. Maya responded, "I know, that's why I have to humble her." When my daughter-in-law informed Leah that Leah would unlock so much potential once she saw her beauty and ignored her bullies. Though she considered it odd at the time, my daughter-in-law didn't give it much attention until recently. Maya blocked them as soon as I tossed her out too, and today they know why. The sentence was not as harsh as I'd anticipated. Leah admitted she first found it to be dull. Of course, the mothers and fathers of the offenders were the character witnesses. One mother reported that it was a terrible night and that we should stop aggravating additional damage. One dad claimed his kid had been mistreated at Leah's age and that Leah had to have set off something inside him. Leah found nothing impressive about this. She said she ignored them, but I sensed it bothered her. I was so very proud of Leah when she chose to create a video and read her victim impact statement. Leah didn't look at all 4 of the offenders even though they all said apologies to her before the court. She heard them and thought only one was really remorseful. The rest responded robotically. 2 of the offenders were sentenced to 10 years, however they might be released 6 years early. Because of his past offenses, the person who filmed it received 12 years. The prosecutor warned me he might be in there for 20+ years due to a different charge. Leah's friend Maya, who she most worries about, received 14 years. The judge noted that he should complete the whole term and not be paroled as he had past difficulties for something similar. Leah wanted them all to be 14 years, but she was good with their sentences. Should they leave early or should there be parole hearings, she will be informed. My son said Maya was present but she stayed far back and departed right away when the court adjourned. Leah was particularly disturbed by some of the families of the offenders trying to personally apologize to her and chat with her. Apart from that, she managed it really nicely. We started debriefing everything while we were driving back home, and I tried to explain the next steps. Leah informed me it was strange that one of the offenders called Maya friend when we arrived home as Maya would not be friends with someone like that. She stated this and my face went white. I realized it was time to tell her. I said, "I had been intending to tell you this. I'm not happy with your sister for several different reasons." Leah was still perplexed, so I clarified that Maya was arrested for leaving the house, not for throwing the party. Leah simply said, "Oh okay, not giving a damn about that." Then I answered, "He wasn't lying in front of the courts. Maya went behind your back that evening to attempt to set you two up. Maya was friends with your sister." I then witnessed the flash of insight. Leah first assumed I was lying, but as I continued to speak, it was as though she watched someone's heart break before her eyes. She interrupted me off and remarked, I don't believe you. Maya would never hang around with someone that terrible. She might not have been best friends with him, but she did have some kind of relationship with him, I said. Mom, if that's true, that's really bad, Leah said. None knows how nasty he was to me all day. I had to sit in the courtroom listening to people claim he was a wonderful person, although it is untrue. Why does nobody agree with that? I started apologizing to her at this time, and she grabbed her phone to call Maya. Maya responded with a really happy, hello, and Leah went right to the point, asking whether Maya had ever been friends with her offender. Maya admitted she was friends with him before anything happened, even though I really believed she would lie. Leah then inquired as to whether she was attempting to get her to date him. And Maya answered honestly and positively. Leah hung off on her before Maya could clarify herself. Leah began shaking rather severely while she was tapping on her phone, and I knew she was blocking Maya on everything. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes once she was done and asked, Mom, why does she hate me so much? Whatever I did to her, she still hates me. I have been trying to be her buddy. Why? Over the course of the day we shed tears together. To be honest, Leah told me the next day she had finished with Maya and wanted nothing to do with her for some time. She stated she felt more enraged than depressed after sleeping on it. She opened out to me and that she wrecked her senior year, hence Maya made her feel ashamed. Leah blamed herself for what happened by not being more cautious and not locking the door. Yet, to now discover that she did lock the door and that Maya had far more control of the circumstances than she led Leah to believe makes her very unhappy. Leah then informed me Maya promised she was quitting, but she had a drug issue with Adderall and medications she had agreed to keep secret. When I asked Leah when her drug addiction first started, she stated she was unaware. Nonetheless, she found her pilfering her concerta in April 2023. Maya then came clean on her drug problem. Leah also thinks Maya's dealer was among her attackers since he used to visit the house late at night while I was working. Leah suffers greatly since Maya traded her for more drugs and never quit as she had promised. Leah further related that her assailant claimed during the attack that if she refused to participate, they would harm Maya, which would make her feel worse since she knows Maya wouldn't do the same for her. Although it was a few weeks ago, that was the last time we truly discussed Maya. I know she is suffering greatly. I went crazy and let her get a cat for this reason. Maya has tried to get in touch with Leah many times utilizing text-free numbers even though she is not sure of our new address. Leah exhibits no curiosity at all. Maya has been taken in by my mother-in-law, with whom I have never gotten along, paying for her education and purchasing her a new automobile just to spite me. She is no longer with my parents. She shared it on Facebook, but I wish I were making this up. The dysfunctional aspect is that although my mother-in-law is aware of what happened to Leah and all Maya accomplished, she simply doesn't care. Using their dad as leverage, she called Leah to guilt trip her, saying, "Your dad would hate to see you fight and hold a grudge against your sister over a mistake." Maya believes Maya is equally a victim as Leah. I stopped talking to her at that point and advised Leah not to answer her going forward. Since my mother-in-law wants to discredit my parenting and harm her other granddaughter by funding Maya's life, I am quite near suing Leah civilly on her behalf. Though I'm so annoyed with the situation, my therapist believes that will not help Leah or me heal. I'm sorry. I'm not doing well and there isn't another ending except that I lost 3 individuals in 4 years. I am quite hopeless. Both of my girls and the love of my life vanished from me. I will never be the same. I still grieve the loss of my small daughter. I also blame myself for not seeing my other daughter in time as I think she is a profoundly defective, dangerous person. I worry about everyone she encounters in her adult years. My wife of 8 years had an affair and shattered me. Now I'm left picking up the pieces, trying to heal and be the best dad I can to our son. I, 31 am still rather devastated over all of this even now after divorce. Having turned in the final divorce decree, I am seated outside the courthouse. Last Wednesday, my cheating lousy wife, 30F, dropped by my office so I could have her sign the final papers. My brother and I manage a store, so we were busy, but I had her come to sign the last paperwork at the back. As I was working on some chores, she read it over. Then I saw she was at the last page staring at it, then at me. Not only peering, she seemed to be begging and had a tiny welling of tears. It was quite frustrating. I advised her not to engage in this garbage and to either sign or not. She opened her lips then closed them once again. Not to pull bullshit like this when she's dating and hooking with other people, I became enraged and instructed her to speak what she had to say. She has not expressed any want to mend our friendship. She signed the forms and left head down. We ended up talking in her car for a second after I had to hunt her down to ask about our stimulus money. She inquired about our son. He's not biologically mine, but I have been there for him since he was 4. Though I try to interact with him every morning, I informed her he doesn't really talk to me anymore. She only nodded and looked dejected. I gently informed her that I was allowing her one chance to speak her truth. She simply stared at me. Furious, I told her she never loved me first of all. She stated it wasn't true, tears running down her face. She wouldn't have considered cheating, I informed her, if she loved me really. Even when other ladies approached me, I had always been loyal. I always turned away as I knew my wife wouldn't enjoy it. I advised her to get in touch with me when she had my money. I wish I had known she didn't love me from the beginning. It would have saved time, effort, and suffering. It is killing me. The hearing scheduled to finish it all is tomorrow. I'm recuperating, rediscovering delight in things I used to enjoy, and loving exercise more. Though I can't seem to find it in me to truly talk to them or try for a date, I'm looking better, getting attention from women, and that's wonderful. Still, my heart longs for her. My heart still loves her. I wish I could take it out and bury it permanently. Though I know I have to go through these emotions and welcome this new life, I'm having trouble. The end of this procedure is surely bringing all these emotions to the forefront. Comments. You did what you were supposed to. You will need time to put this behind you. Her crocodile tears center on losing a home base to Monkey Branch. The greatest disrespect is cheating, and it never comes from a place of love. You're better off, time will help you move on. Thank you for your help, I am working on moving on. I have many I just wish ideas to shove aside and let go. OP. You adored someone she used to be. Today she is not that person. Though it is difficult, disconnecting takes time. If anything, I will use this time to heal and appreciate what I do today. It will make me a better person generally. You cannot simply switch off and on your emotions. Never give your morals or standards any concessions. Don't force yourself to start looking for another companion. Be selective and date when you're ready. Let alone offer my body to another woman, I am not looking to enter yet another relationship. The most I'm hurrying is trying to not feel anything for her. As you pointed out, it's a process. Sometimes, oh man, I do want to sacrifice my morals. I want to tell each parent of my son's soccer squad everything about the person she is and email blast all of them. I want to print flyers to plaster her preferred locations and publish it all over Instagram. But none of that is me. I know that person is not who I am. I'm just still hurting and really trying to mend. I greatly appreciate your nice comments and support, they really mean a lot. I understand that it seems so unjust and as if justice does not exist on our planet. Don't jump in the mud with the pigs, you'll get dirty too and be mistaken for a pig. My grandma often advised me. Never treat yourself less than that. While some individuals reject karma, indeed it is quite gradual but also meticulous. She will be revealed one day, or something will transpire to grant her the justice she so deserves. You only have to be loyal to yourself. Your children will also see it. They will know you as the one who did not devalue themselves. Just treat yourself politely. Update 1, yesterday was that. Here I am today, single and most certainly in shock. Other than having this massive pit in my gut, I'm not sure how I should feel. She understood the timing of the hearing, but I find a Zoom call to the court to be just so impersonal. Of course, I realize, safety comes first. Still, it doesn't particularly feel real. It really hasn't really sunk me. I mean, I can acquire a copy of the signed document and declare myself to be divorced. A couple of my buddies want to know whether I want to go celebrate. They want to be there for me, they are lovely about it. They are not being nasty or resentful. And that feels great. I simply have not known how to approach this. I should be feeling free, yet maybe I should be crying once more. Oddly enough, I simply want to hear my wife's voice. Unfortunately, I no longer have a wife. Some stranger that sounds like her and wears her face. Though it's only a resigned kind of sensation, I can sense tears gathering. Here I am, simply me. Furthermore, my dog. I have very few friends, but they are the finest. I have a great and fantastic family. Thus, support is discussed. I merely feel empty, exhausted and drained. What should my next action be is unknown. Tell my son that it has happened over the phone. Say F it all, and go to Italy to begin exploring sites. Go back to Vegas with my old buddies for a desert recharging trip. I truly want to be laying here in silence, staring at the ceiling. Naturally though, life has to go on and so should I. I appreciate all of your support and ideas, especially book recommendations. I'm eager to at least start since I'm picking those up today. I never imagined myself in this place. Notes. Italy's timing is horrible, but whenever it becomes sensible, that has my enthusiastic vote. Vegas is a temporary prospect with friend events instead of the still skeletal and dreary casino resort life. Mountains and the weather are just beautiful. I left McCarran yesterday straight out. My friend, I find myself in the same boat. This afternoon at 3 o'clock I am signing paperwork. She departed and deserted our family on our 22nd wedding anniversary almost 2 years ago. I say every word you are using exactly. Simply said, I feel hollow and worn out by the struggle. Hang in there, friend, better things are just waiting for us. One breath at a time, one stride in front of the other, we simply have to be patient and gentle to ourselves. Recall this, we deserve better. Damn, I sense your words suffering. Regards, apologies. Update 2. The last post I produced was seen above the last time I blogged. Right now it's really upsetting me as I'm still kind of disoriented inside. Like me, my ex-wife, crazy to type it out, was off to work. At the same junction, we both stopped. She was turning right to ride on the freeway I had just left off, while I was going to turn left under the overpass. Like metal butterflies ripping up my insides, my heart and stomach sprang with the same familiar, exhilarating and lately terrible sensations. We made eye contact until the light changed, then each drove our separate directions. Both literally and metaphorically, I could not think of a more appropriate comparison for the state of affairs. Still feeling longing, grief, rage, disappointment, nausea, and a rainbow of other depression-inducing emotions, here I am typing out my pain. I wish I could be indifferent for the love of God. I wish I could rip out, root and all this deep-seated affection. Her and her stupidity justifies nothing. Though it's exactly what I want not to feel, is still in love with her. Her scent, her warmth, the sensation of her hair brushing against my face and mixing with my beard, the feel of her soft skin against my bare chest, the rhythm of her heart against my arms when I held her in the dark, these are the sweetest dreams I have of her. Recently they have been most vivid. She left such an effect on me when it was so darn simple for her to demolish everything we had created together. Yes, I understand it is past. Indeed, I understand the sensation might never go away. Indeed, I understand that processing trauma will take time. I am tired of processing though, of feeling the hurt, of sobbing, of reminding myself that it is okay to not be okay. I miss experiencing even-keeled. Every day seems like I'm standing on a platform precariously atop a damned barrel. Some days it's all good. I got this, balance can be kept. I've been doing it for 8 months, therefore I should be used to this. Other days though, I feel as though the agony of betrayal never lets me find even a tiny respite. I trip off the platform since right now equilibrium is useless. We can rather clearly tell the kind of day this one is. Usually, it becomes worse before it improves. I despise platitudes. Update 3, made the 3-week mark, the final post above. I watched our son's middle school soccer game yesterday and was so happy to see him. How much he has changed and how big he is. He's so darn tall, his voice is cracking, and it's weird not to have personally seen it. Feeling like I was being watched from the bleachers, I didn't see my ex-wife until practically half hour. I turned and our gazes met squarely. Her parents were seated with her. They lost the game, sadly, but the team rocked it still. I waited for the squad to pass over the bleachers as people filed off them. I nodded, using their first names, but her parents passed past if I hadn't uttered a word. I laughed and let the throng pass. Not over the phone or via text, it was great to hug my kid and chat with him personally when I waited for him at the team exit. The thrill of seeing each other once more permeated every moment. At last, my ex came up to tell our son loving words. Since I depend on her for those specifics, I asked her when the next game is scheduled. Our chat was clinical. We know we're not decent and most certainly aren't buddies. After instructing her not to sit next to me at the last game, I made that plain. Let's go, she tells our son, and he gives me a long embrace. I love him, I tell him. Though difficult, I do let go. I turn and go in the other way from my car, not looking at her or bidding farewell. The one I listened to and loved for almost a decade wants to run over and grab her, kiss those lips, hug her body in my arms, and feel her warmth and heartbeat, the one I feel slightly betrayed by my heart because of. I have to aggressively control it. Not until I come home and sit in silence to reflect on everything will there be tears. Even then though, they are few. I'm still figuring out these emotions. I still experienced additional wonderful dreams of hers till this morning. Once more, I feel as if I am fighting my own body and my own thoughts. I'm doing everything I can. I work out practically every day and eat clean with perhaps 1 or 2 cheat meals a week. I have poured myself into the business of my brother and find it to be flourishing. To be very honest, we never had this many staff members. It's fantastic. I am studying about stocks and investing, reading more, and certifying myself for IT jobs. Most of all, Jack, my corgi, is my other little kid and always wants to play. Filling the emptiness is odd. It certainly seems like a vast gaping void inside me. Being a father and a husband was great fun. As Hurricane Harvey approached Texas, we nearly decided to have another kid. In our house we were safe, dry, and not at all impacted. Though by November we knew she was pregnant, there were plenty of fun, crazy, and somewhat exotic events. Money, space, and our present circumstances finally led us both to agree that we should stop the pregnancy and not have another kid. I wonder if things would be different, whether we would be at this place now, and if she would have **** at another person. This has started me thinking back. Yes, I know the what-if game is never a nice place to be, never a good thing to linger on, but lately it's just been emerging more and more in my mind, let alone the dreams, like I had last night of my beautiful wife and what could have been our little girl or our second little boy. It makes me miss my son even more, and it irritates me that she would not let me adopt him. She said that I could only after all this garbage had transpired. I apologize for the protracted post. I simply find myself repeating and ranting last night in my head. It hasn't even been a year since she broke off our relationship. I know it's still early and quite fresh following the divorce. I suppose all I can say is that today I'm not feeling it. It's almost 10 a.m. I haven't gotten out of bed. That she still affects me and how I feel every time I see her bothers me. Update 4. Hey everyone. At last I have developed an apathetic attitude. Other than that I'm feeling happier more consistently, I'm not really sure what to say. Right now I'm working out on a schedule. Cooking more, and experimenting. I have been picking up writing once more and presently work on a short story. To see the Phoenix Suns defeat the Nuggets I flew to Denver. I'm about to head to Oregon to visit a cousin, do some hiking, and try tubing in a new place. Though, my bond with my son is different. I got in touch, he seems really busy. Though man, this is what it feels like to have a full-on teenage son. I'm doing my best to be understanding. Lunch and meals here and there, I suppose I will grab what I can. Simply said, I miss being with him consistently. I now go on dates with someone. She manages her own companies, is just fantastic, independent, intelligent, strong, mature, runs slow here. She is aware of my circumstances and both of us are cautious not to leap in too quickly. Still, it's amazing. Our interests are somewhat similar, we have easy communication and our goals are rather apparent. Even now, when we are simply lounging about, it is just calm. I am attempting to keep myself from developing any negative habits or tendencies. Simply said, it is fantastic to feel good once more. She asked yesterday, what will happen if, and when another man gets involved with my son? To be honest, I'm not sure. If he doesn't reach out, then it's just me having to sit back and hope for the best for him. I will be there for him is all I dare think or say. In this I have no legal clout or rights. Fortunately, I have seen her face to her face and I truly don't feel anything for my ex. Though I'm trying to take it day by day and hope I keep recovering and finding happiness more and more, whatever that means, that my son and I can have a better relationship and that I not muck this up with this amazing woman. I appreciate your support, counsel, book recommendations and encouragement all around. That was therefore fleeting, tragically. The incredible woman was disturbed by my April divorce and feels that I'm not over her since I call our son ***. I just mention him in reference to co-parenting and the fact that I have to go through her for anything pertaining to him. I have a son. She's also saying she still has to recuperate from a breakup she went through 3 months ago with a guy she loved. I could see the healing, but I couldn't picture involving someone new with my son at this age. November is his 14th birthday, and it's ****ing strange when others tell me what I feel and get wrong. She also objects to being a stepmother. I never even brought up her young 4-year-old daughter. Once more, I am living that part of my life apart from this present one. Why is this troubling to me? Though in my past relationship I did nothing illegal, I feel like I'm marked. It's held against me after being honest with each other and such, just because I'm divorced and have a much older son who would most certainly never be part of the relationship. Feels quite unjust. If I tell people straight up about my circumstances, I'm accused of not being over my ex. I'm not being real about things if I hold that back and say nothing. Update 5. Some have wondered how this all started and how I got up where I am today, hence I attempted publishing this earlier as an explanation of what went down when things initially started. Though recent, this began in July of last year. Far from all this, I am appreciative of all the guidance, encouragement and kicks in the *** from those who have gone through it and are helping. Alright, so far as things stand, July 2020 started as if everything was going downward. June turned out fantastic. Together with our son and his friend, we had taken a brief trip. We had fun together and the intimacy was amazing. They hung out. July arrived and we were having problems, spats over dumb small things. She showed no desire in closeness. Her day would be of interest to me, but she exhibited no curiosity about me. Long bathroom stays and baths all the damn time, yet she wanted to gripe about not spending time with us. July passed like this. August started to get more tense. She even tried to present me with lingerie and stated it would be for my birthday, like if everything was normal. My birthday arrives, she gets me several LPs but nothing particularly noteworthy. I had a tough day at work. She did too apparently, and we ended up cooking and hanging around together. I reasoned, it's a workday and it's whatever. She seems not truly present but delivers intimacy. We had several major arguments in September at last, one of which she begged to have some alone time. Though this was suspicious, I became insane as I felt our marriage was falling apart. As correct as me. Taking the dogs, I headed to spend the evening with my brother and his family. I returned home early in the afternoon the following day. I never stopped her from hanging out with her friends. She had mentioned she wanted to go before I arrived. I arrived home at about 12 o'clock. At 6 or 7 she arrived home. Happy to see her, I told her when I saw her. She said the month was awful and that week was especially so. She was unpleasant, snarky, straightforward nasty, not kissing me. I kept urging her to tell me what was going on. I wanted us to be fine. I sensed things were off. Now a quite good friend, an acquaintance, expressed concern after seeing me at work. I told him I loved my wife very much. We had been married for 1.5 at this point and had been together for 8.5 years, yet I had no idea what to do. He advised marriage therapy and advised reading *The 5 Love Languages* and another book I cannot remember right now. After reading the book right away I knew I had been giving work too much top priority. Our company is owned by my brother and me. Since COVID, we have been overrun as business has been flourishing. I never stopped trying to love her or be close, both physically and in talks, though even then. She had vanished though. I got home that same day and she was unwell. I looked after hers. As she was getting dressed the next morning, I gently and affectionately requested whether we might talk before she left. Having read the book all night before, I told her everything I had discovered. Although I said I had been lazy, I loved her and advised us to visit marriage counseling to try to mend things because we had our son and loved one another. She broke down crying and kept repeating I was going to hate her, hence anything I said must have set off her. She finally acknowledged that she had cheated on me last weekend when she was with her friends after being urged to be straight up with me. Though I was stunned and totally blown away, I loved my son, marriage and wife. Like a fool, I assured her everything was good, I could forgive her, but she had to come clean on everything. She then clammed up. No names, no information. Basically, she had been having an emotional affair until that day in September and had been chatting to the other man since July. How could I find her credible? I did not. I told her she had parodied our marriage and our vows. It was Thursday. She rejected and offered very little justification when I tried to have a conversation with her that evening. She said she had told the other guy she had confessed to me, but she never consented to discuss things. Friday comes around the same way. I'm dry heaving, haven't slept, feel eerie, furious, and damaged within. When Saturday finally arrived, my brother advised me to go home and go out what was happening after seeing the damage I was causing. She got up, started working out, and I stayed a mess all the while. I phoned my father, who had been the cheater in his marriage, but my mother and he sorted things out. Their marriage has been wonderful for 38 years now. I asked him for his opinion. He said, she understood exactly what she was doing. It's not a mistake. She has to decide. If she doesn't, that tells you all you need to know. Though a wreck, I got myself together. I made sure our son was looked after and tidied the house. I then descended to our apartment gym and instructed her to come see me after she finished. She showed up half an hour later, and I gently reminded her that she had to decide between our family and marriage or the other guy. All I got was, I don't know, and she requested for some time. I agreed on the stipulation that she not see or contact him. She agreed and headed for a 2-hour run. On an app, I could see her whereabouts. She returned, at last saw I had cleaned the place and started to cry. What she had decided, I asked her. Once more it was a profusion of I don't know. She muttered, it's over, at last as I pushed her. Okay, I answered. I grabbed a duffel bag, stuffed some clothes inside, and she started crying since I was truly leaving. I was crying too. My son is distracted with computer games, so he's good when I kiss him and tell him I'm going to spend a short time at his uncle's. I bail. I tell her I'll be back in the morning for my stuff. When I arrive at about 6 a.m. the next morning, I take trash bags right away and head straight into our bedroom, bathroom and closet to begin packing everything I own into them. Tears flowing, she sits up in bed staring at me. She probes me about what I'm doing and I tell her she made her choice. She begins to wail. Though it breaks my heart, my wife is also wanted once more. Like a fool, I lie in bed with her, embrace her and kiss her for half an hour. She has to come clean. I assure her it doesn't have to be this way. Silence. Furious, I yelled at her that all of this was useless. I pack and inform her my father and brother are at a cafe 5 minutes away, waiting for my call to assist with the heavy stuff. It is 11 a.m. by now, and I have bagged everything. She wants us to tell our son what? We go wake him and give him a farce of an explanation for poor communication. She says she would rather not see my family. She is embarrassed, hence I do not blame her. She brings our son shopping, and I can tell he's a little disoriented and bewildered. My dad and brother answer when I call. We took my 3 TVs and all the gadgets I had acquired to make our house smart. Naturally, I left my son all his great stuff. I love him and none of this is his fault. She texts me not to go and to wait for her and our son before I head off. I'm waiting. She finds the place looking as though it had been looted. She advises me not to go and notes that our son, enraged, knocked over a display and expressed desire we could still be a family. I give her a look that says nothing nice, and then I tell her naturally he does. I want to, but what the devil is she looking for? Once more with the I have no idea. I say remaining is pointless for me. She should notify her parents as, should they discover it from our kid, they would be enraged. The first week of October arrives next week. I attempt to keep our son on a routine. Some mornings I have to be at work early, so I show up for him, drive him to school, and make breakfast. On other mornings I take him to see his grandparents. I load everything on her parents when they inquire about what's going on. She is sticking to her foolishness even though I tell them we should mend things. I'm not clear. Having learned to love and respect one another, her dad is angry and depressed for me. She is texting me about how she hates herself and finds it hard to believe she accomplished all this. She is still chatting to the other man all through. She even inquires as to if we may get back together. I tell her she knows what she has to do if she wants me back. During the week, I pick up my son after practice and head home. I love him, thus I consent when he wants to show me something. We spent 1 hour in his room. She's a wreck when I walk out to the living room. She approaches me closely and wants me to sit down with her, encircling me with arms. I almost give in, but I get up and tell her I'm not doing this if she's still chatting to or involved with this man. She claims she cut it off, hence I sit down and hug her. We even gently kiss and I touch her. The phone then rings, a new ringtone, and I know she is panicking inside. From her end he has been phoning all day. I ask her to show me she stopped it and stare her in the eyes. She starts to cry and objects. She understands what she has to do if she wants me. I remind her once more. I'm still returning throughout the week to pick up my son from school and even cooking meals to store in the refrigerator. She is not doing laundry. I have to push myself not to do it for her. But I find my son smells from not washing and his blankets are dirty. Her neglect of him calls for me to chastise her. Her friends wanted to take her to the Renaissance Fair that weekend, and I find it amazing how she is acting as if everything is good. She asks whether I might spend a few hours watching our son. I want time with him, therefore I say yes, but even I know I'm not really ready for that. I agree otherwise as well. 4 additional lads walk out and get in my car when I show up after work to fetch him up from his friend's house, probably a sleepover. Not at him, but at her, I am enraged. She understands from my call that I would be leaving should she not return. She is behaving all piffy about it and it takes 3 hours to return. She has the arrogance to argue that spending her birthday with pals shouldn't cause her guilt. She took advantage, and this is never going to happen again. She should feel horrible given all that is going on. Weeping, she asks, what, am I only supposed to be a mother? I don't say anything about that either, but god damn it, yes, you picked this before I even entered the scene. We chat a little longer, and she even invites me to stay, to sleep in the same bed and be close. I turn it down and head off. My son strikes me as depressed. Even though it's taxing both financially and emotionally, I keep seeing him since now I'm just 45 minutes away. Her parents just know what I have told them since she is avoiding them too. This is October 25th, the birthday of my ex. Things have been strange. I am shamefully performing the pick-me dance. Monday here, and I'm sending nice video greetings, but she seems apathetic about it. I start with a little present, working my way up, then I go in the morning to look after our son, drive him to school, and then I do what I always do on her birthday week. I cleaned off a picture of the three of us at a pumpkin patch when we first got acquainted. It's a lovely image. I developed this itching inside me just before leaving. Though I had no idea what set off me, I started looking about. Opening a fresh shoebox, I discovered a new vibrator, a new dildo, and new butt plugs within. When I left, I had tossed every toy we owned. She preserved the container as well, and the postmarks date the day I left. Even a gift note including the man's name. Then I found a note tucked within the shoebox. It came from a woman, but her last name matched that of the AP's other gift note. Opening it, I came upon a picture of a family. 2 small boys, a baby, a dog, a guy and a lady. Along with it was a letter informing my ex that she might retain AP but had wrecked her marriage. The woman clarified that she had learned about him from the toys he had sent. I snapped pictures and went right to her parents to show what I had discovered. Get a lawyer, get all my ducks in a row, and then file, her dad advised me, same counsel many of you had given me. That same day I did that. When it arrived a few days later, I handed her the paperwork. We sat on it for months. We attended soccer matches, had a few private evenings, but I wouldn't dare sleep with her even though the chance presented itself. At one soccer game, she eventually observed that I wasn't really at my best. I prodded till she said she was seeing someone. That following week, I turned in every file. We seem caught up right now. Update 6. I returned to the same vacation location I visited last summer in order to snowboard. Just me out here, this was my first true adventure. All wholly mine. I never made the trip to serve as a kind of diversion or anything else. I visited the slopes 10 years ago and performed rather well. I can't describe how emotionally satisfying it is to be without the drag of my ex-wife, who hated everything outdoors, let alone snow or cold. Snowboarding has always made me happy. I was thumbing my ring finger trying to spin the long-gone ring as I strolled throughout the city. Though we had been separated almost 2 years ago, seeing couples engage in Valentine's Day activities somewhat weighs on my heart. It's strange. I suppose I miss having the ring there, especially what the ring ought to have symbolized. Ultimately, though with my ex, it was only a lump of metal and a false promise. I guess I'm simply reflecting, but I can't describe how quite dreamy this has been. After hurting so terribly, the happiness, enthusiasm, laughing and foolishness that have permeated my life seem amazing. Hell, I'm sore and in pain beyond what I can recall from the last time I went snowboarding, but this ache is one I have totally missed. For those of you who are struggling, however, cliched as it seems, it does indeed get better with time. Spend some time grieving and hurting, then go forward. Improve yourself for yourself. I appreciate everyone being there and listening. Update 7. The divorce occurred 2 years ago. This is the month the divorce was finalized. As the title suggests, the dreams are resurfacing. Strange seems to be the situation. Dreaming, we find ourselves at a house I have never seen before. She begs me to accompany her upstairs. We both are nude. We arrive upstairs to what looks to be our room, and she looks me up and down, giving me that smile I remember and liked, then says, "Hi." I have nowhere to start. She walks up, puts her hands in mine, and all I can say back is, "Hi." She presses her body into mine and I encircle her in my arms. Her beautiful skin and warmth really speak to me. She smells her shampoo even now. Actually, I'm pleased my dog woke me up seconds later. This is my second dream for this month. Not since last November, not seen my ex in months. Emotion such things is strange. More of a what the heck kind of emotion. One reason all of this is happening could be my recent house building on my own. I guess I'm just sort of airing out my mind. Today feels odd. My warmest wishes go out to those of you hurting. Update 8. I met with my son yesterday in great anticipation. Since his last birthday, I had not heard anything significant from him. It has been killing me. Again though, I understand how teenagers behave and I'm sure he has a lot on his plate with his middle school to high school change. His mother's obnoxious boyfriend is also a factor. To be honest, when he at last picked up the phone, I got rather happy. Our chat was nice. It took a moment of me telling him what I'd been up to, building a house, our corgi getting older, and as always, our love of video games, to pull him out of his shell. High ranking in Rocket League, he has been invited to a competition including pros scheduled for Twitch broadcast. I really am thrilled for him. We should keep chatting. He promises to email me the link. From his now totally different voice, I take it as a little triumph that he still thinks of me as dad. I am flattered and happy. My heart started feeling it once more a few hours after our afterglow conversation. It was more of a dull ache, just aching deep down within me. It hurt and bothered me enough to cause me to hardly sleep last night. Seeing my attitude, my father asked what was bothering me. I first found it difficult to actually put it into words, but the second time he asked, it came naturally. The weight and suffering still exist even if I'm completely happy when I have my son and can still be a part of his life in any manner he chooses. It's enough to keep my head spinning over why. At this point, I realize the cause has no bearing on anything or would provide comfort. Everything is done and accomplished, however even 2 years down the road it is still fresh and painful. My pride in being my son's dad and my emotions of love and admiration for him are so entwined with the love I had for my ex, which now simply acts as a painful reminder every time I see him. Though I can't say I know what you're feeling, coming from this side of your situation, you may need to ask yourself if the pain and suffering are worth it for your mental health and general well-being. My father, a cheater in his own time but someone who makes amends and keeps on doing so, told me. Though you love him with all your being and the time you spend brings enormous delight, it follows days of rehabilitation for you. I am not advising you to give up on him as, if it were me trying to be there for you, I would never stop. Perhaps you should nonetheless, let go of everything. You gave all you have. I haven't seen you this joyful in a long time. Still, I can see the toll it takes on you. Your emotions divided between your love for your son and the anguish you obviously still have from how you were deceived. I understand he's acting as a father, seeing obvious suffering on my face while his son battles. He would never want it lastingly. Given the lengths of his military training, which trained him to detach himself and view events from several angles, I take it as his attempt to provide wise guidance. He does not intend to just vanish from my son's life, I'm sure. Maybe he only wants me to keep outside of it all. Perhaps he only wants to spare me the suffering still afflicting my heart. Just letting my ideas float about. My best wishes extend to everyone suffering right now. Particularly to those in healing, remain strong and keep cheerful. Comments. OP, your first response and attitude to him calling were exactly perfect. For a teen especially, this is all quite challenging ground to walk. Talk not of his mother, her partner, or their domestic situation. Create an oasis out of yourself and your relationship with your son. Be in his life a non-judging lighthouse. Should the matter come up, avoid pledging yourself to a position. Still keep your distance and objectivity. Find out his short-term bucket list. Perhaps you two might handle a few of those jointly. Luck. I agree absolutely and thank you. Out of our conversations, I make sure to keep any reference to his home situation or anything about his mother away. I concentrate on talking about just him and me and avoid passing opinions. Though it feels like negotiating in the dark, I am trying to assist him with a list. That's the intensity of my affection. I won't give up on him. Thank you for the guidance. I will keep making sure that what we publish is a refuge. My wife wanted half of everything I owned after sleeping with her ex, so I vanished and rebuilt my life in secret only to find true love. Though I was wrong, I had thought the day could not possibly go worse. To top it off, my boss, the company president, called me into his office to chastise me over a mistake made by someone else. The whole week at work had been terrible. When I got home I found that my sister-in-law's car was blocking my driveway, so I couldn't park close to my house. I had to park 3 doors down as the teenage son of a neighbor and his buddies had parked automobiles all over the street. Coming inside the house, I wondered why I bothered. From the day we met, my relationship with Susan, my wife's sister, had always been tense. Though I couldn't understand why, she seemed to despise me right away. Moreover, despite my continuous attempts, we hadn't been intimate in about a month, thus I had little expectation for a special evening with my wife Janice. When I got to my driveway, I saw an empty garbage can by the curb and hauled it around the side of the house via the side gate to position near the back door. When I walked into the kitchen, my wife and her sister were chatting in the living room and I heard music. Pulling a beer from the refrigerator, I tasted it and turned to face the living room. But a sentence I overheard at the door stopped me cold. Not from my sister-in-law but from my darling wife. God, he ******ed me 3 times today. My wife admitted, ever since Brandon came back last month, I just can't get enough of him. Brandon was my wife's ex-boyfriend, who had left her and gone away. Interested, the sister of my wife inquired, so what are you going to do now? Janice said, I'll find a lawyer and file for divorce. Brandon wants me to move in with him. I'll get half of everything since this is a communal property state. More than enough had I heard. I went to the rear door numbly, then turned around to find my car. I opened the door and dropped into the driver's seat, now understanding the reason I had been denied any closeness. My wife wanted half of everything now since she was sharing it with someone else. The worst aspect was that she most certainly would get it from the state. Janice and I had tied the knot 3 years ago. She had left her employment immediately following our vows and never raised a finger at home. 3 times a week for house cleaning and laundry, I paid a maid. On those days, she would make dinner. She ordered takeout or I cooked the remainder of the time. Though love wore blinders on me, I know what you could be thinking. At least until a month ago she kept me pleased by giving decent sex. When my mother died when I was 13, my father and I suffered a terrible loss. We were really close and Dad did his best to raise me appropriately. Losing him to a drunk driver when I was 23 was a major blow, happening just 1 year before I saw Janice. Taking almost $2.5 million from Dad, I carefully managed the money under the direction of a competent broker. I had several $100,000 in savings that I had never touched, let them flourish even in the current economy, even as Janice tried to spend every dollar I made. I had enough to live reasonably without squandering my fortune. Our love for Janice caused us to overlook a prenuptial agreement, a common error many make believing their marriage will endure a lifetime. This control allowed her to perhaps take almost $1.5 million from me, all for the benefit of spreading her legs. The state looked all too ready to back this approved kind of exploitation. She had indicated she wasn't quite ready to serve me, so I realized I had some time to act and proposed contacting a lawyer. Developing a strategy, I watched the rear-view mirror in my car until I saw my sister-in-law's automobile pull out and head away. Starting the car, I turned around and headed back to my driveway. Janice vanished from sight when she first arrived at the house, so I went to get another beer in the kitchen. Popping the cap and sipping slowly, I considered where to go from here. Janice said, "Oh, there you are, honey," walking into the kitchen. "I didn't hear you arrive." "Hello, darling, I arrived right now." "Been a hard day," I said with a kind smile, resolved to perform as convincingly as she had. "I didn't have time to order anything for dinner," she remarked, slightly pouting. Though I wanted to add, "That's because you spent your day with your lover, discussing all the details with your sister." What I said was, "That's okay, sweetheart. I'll just reheat some yesterday night's leftovers." She declared she was going to go up and relax in a hot bath, smiled sweetly, and kissed my cheek. Grinning and nodding, I thought, yeah, gotta wash all that away *. She went and I ate a chilly plate of fried rice while downing 2 more beers. I threw the empty container, then channel surfed back to the den and sank into the chair. At last I came across an old movie. About half an hour later, Janice came back and sat on the couch till the movie stopped. Rising, she claimed to be exhausted and headed for bed. Yeah, worn out from being disloyal *. I said I would join her later and watch the news. I hadn't actually seen the film. My thoughts were on strategizing my next action. Knowing I had little till Monday, I made it through the following few days working in the yard on Saturday and golfing on Sunday with friends. I handled my inherited holdings over Monday's call to my broker, and got everything sold. Being in top management let me quickly cash in my $401,000, thus avoiding penalties. By Thursday I was ready to act. I told my apparently loving wife of an emergency and said that I would be heading out for a week on corporate business. All I needed was 2 suitcases packed. I had kept all that meant to me when we moved into this house. Nothing else I wanted fit her taste, so there was nothing else I wanted. She chose the furniture, hence honestly I couldn't give a damn about it. The silver lining in this was that we were renting the house, hence I had no financial commitment connected with it. We were looking for the perfect house to buy after just selling my unit. When I say right, I mean right as judged by her criteria. None of the homes we looked at seemed to fit her standards. I carried my bags out the door Friday morning and gave one more kiss on the cheek to my wife, loaded them into my Lexus, and I left without looking back once. My first stop was at the house of an old friend I trusted entirely. When I suggested a trading title for his repaired 4-wheel drive car, he was shocked. Having told him about my circumstances, an hour later I was traveling west. I questioned whether anyone would link me to this car, and Jake assured me the car I traded him for would be kept under cover in the garage for some time. I paid with cash for the next 4 days for everything. To try to leave no paper trace, I had canceled all of our credit cards. Thanks to my broker, most of my money was securely buried in an offshore account. I set up with him a mechanism to handle fund transfers as needed. There was enough cash stashed in the SUV to last for some time. The toughest were the evenings spent in motels. I had been too preoccupied last week implementing my strategy to consider what had personally happened to me. I had adored Janice. Had I not, I would not have married her. Though I experimented in my imagination through several what-if scenarios, I came to the conclusion that there wasn't much I could have done differently. I doubted I could have kept them apart even if I knew her former boyfriend had returned. Arriving at two conclusions, I realized it was my own fault for being naive enough to marry her, and she most likely never really loved me. On the 7th day away from home, I was seated at a tiny town Montana mom and pop cafe. By now my purportedly loving wife must have realized that our bank account was empty and that all of her credit cards were canceled. I wondered what she was up to. An older couple seated at the adjacent table caught my attention and broke off my thoughts with their subdued talk. Looking to be in his late 50s, the man was sharing with his red-haired wife his need for an additional worker on their farm. Sadly, they could not afford to pay someone until their present calves were ready for sale. Finding someone prepared to labor for what they could pay proved difficult even then. As I finished my last mouthful of food, I got up and went over to their table to apologize for listening in but also offer to help them. The elder man examined me closely, assessing me. "I don't understand how you could accomplish it. You know I can't pay you anything if you overheard what we were discussing. What if I merely need somewhere to live in return for my work?" I proposed. His eyes contracted. "Colleen, excuse us for a moment while I speak to this young man outside," he told his spouse. Rising, he watched for me to trail him. He turned to face me once in the parking lot, where our chat would stay private. I judged him to be roughly my height, 6 feet, with broad shoulders and no fat at all. His face revealed the rough lines of years spent laboring outside, and his once black hair was mostly gray. "Who the hell are you? Are you part of the Wilson Ranch?" he inquired, a little wary. Defensively raising my hands I said, "Hold on there, mister. About any Wilson, I know nothing. I arrived here this morning. 4 days ago I was living in Texas. Perhaps we could help one another out." He said, "Why would you want to assist us out if what you claim is true? I'm not able to pay you. What is it for you? We don't need such trouble if you're on the run from the law." Saying, "I'm probably on the run, as you put it, but not like you may think," I said. I then told them about my unfaithful wife wanting to take me to the cleaners and how I could use a place to stay for a little. "Nobody have I robbed or killed. I'm just attempting to retain what is rightly mine. Should you have a place I could stay, I will work for you in return. I'll pay my own way. If you don't believe I'm of assistance, let me know. I'll be on my way with no resentment." Examining my face, he continued, "I think I would be a fool not to at least give you a shot if what you're telling me is the truth. I must tell you straightforwardly though, the Wilsons are trying to have me sell my land to them. Though I wouldn't write it past them, they haven't done anything dishonest yet. You might be chewing off more than you can handle." I told him I was ready to run the risk. He then asked about my experience ranching, and I told him straightforwardly, I was not a cowboy. I had spent a couple summers on my uncle's Texas property. He reached out and we shook in unison on our agreement. I introduced myself and he advised me to phone Bill, his first name. Colleen was waiting in the diner when we returned. He yelled out to her, "Colleen, this is Carson. Should he be able, he will be working for us." She got up and reached out her hand. I shook it and she said kindly, "It's very nice to meet you, Carson." Her voice was clear, maybe with a trace of Irish accent. She was trim and fit, just as her husband was. "It's good to meet you too, ma'am," I added. She answered, "You just call me Colleen, the last name is Buckman. Not really needed for formality in this region of the nation." This lovely woman appealed to me right away. Bill urged us to return to the ranch. He drove up to a general store before leaving town, and we both got out of our cars. "I might want to pick up some clothes fit for ranch work," he remarked. He was greeted warmly by the proprietor as he entered the store, clearly a frequent visitor. For the time being, a coat and some Western-style riding boots would have been plenty. From the general store, the main gate was about 20 minutes drive away, arched under the name Rocking Bee Ranch. Bill called his brand Rocking Bee. Another mile of a private road brought one to the main house on top of a hill. Their 2-story house looked recently painted and well kept. Behind it started to show a barn and a number of outhouses. The partially laden sacks of food in their pickup suggested their weekly supply excursion into town. I trailed the Buckmans into the kitchen, tugged behind them and packed things into my arms. 2 visits saw the vehicle emptied. Bill told me to drive out back and showed me a little hut for my lodging. I saw him standing in front of the cabin as I pulled around. He pointed to the cabin when I came out, saying Sam used a similar one a few yards away and mentioning Sam was out making the rounds. I will meet him later. He waited while I settled into the cabin after emptying my baggage. Its one big room featured a bed along one wall, a table with 2 seats, a potbelly wood burner in one corner, and a bathroom with a single stone shower. Though it wasn't opulent, it was tidy and a good place to stay for now. At least would let me hopefully avoid running across Janice. He was sitting in his pickup when I came outside and instructed me to climb in. With a couple of 100 acres put aside for winter fodder, he showed me around the roughly 6,000 acre property. Accessible solely on horseback, the mountainous, forest-covered back part of the ranch produced mountains with a creek running across the land. Bill said he used to have 3 full-time hands, but Sam was the only one left through trying circumstances. Sam had been working on the ranch almost 30 years ago. They recruited extra personnel during roundups choosing cattle to bring to market. Bill dropped me up at the modest cabin and said, "By the way, I saw you have a laptop. You can access the internet wirelessly from my satellite connection to a router. Supper is in the main house. We usually eat about 6:30. He left in tow. I was settled in less than 30 minutes, allowing time to turn on my computer. I made a Wi-Fi connection as he had advised and rapidly checked for emails. Jake sent one note that Janice had reported me missing to the police and they were looking at my absence. It provoked some thought for me. The only person I had really mentioned leaving was Jake, and even he was unsure of my destination. Though I had sent my resignation to my previous company, I hadn't personally told them about my leaving. I knocked on the main home door just before 6:30. Bill asked me to come in, and as I entered, Colleen was cooking while Bill stood to the side chatting to a man I thought to be Sam. Pointing me over, Bill said, "Sam, here is Carson, the new hand I mentioned. For today at least. After a day's work, we'll see how he feels about it tomorrow," Bill replied, flashing a broad smile. "Carson, meet Sam," said. Sam extended his hand and grinned warmly at me. At least 6 3/8, he was a large man. Like Bill, he seemed to have worked hard all of his life and matched in age. He was African American, one obvious fact. Sensing the force in his hand, I shook it. "Well, young man, let us hope this here appeals to you. I could benefit from your support," he replied. He thought of me as youthful since at 28 I was roughly half his age. I said, "I plan to give it my best shot." Colleen contacted us just then to get us seated for dinner. Bill and his wife sat at opposite ends of the table, leaving Sam and me to sit between them across from each other. On the table were a big dish of mashed potatoes, a huge platter of pork chops, another with fresh green beans, and a plate piled with definitely handcrafted biscuits. "We don't eat fancy here, Carson, but there's plenty and it's filling," Colleen stated. "It looks really good," I said. I asked Bill if he had lived here all his life as we ate. "Yep," he answered. "Starting this ranch, my grandfather handed it to my father. Now it belongs to Colleen and myself. Although, in younger years I wasn't so sure she would be involved with it. I had to fend off every man to acquire her." He turned to face his wife, and I could see how deeply he loved her. "Now Bill," she said, "you know you're the only man I ever had eyes for. I simply had to make sure you wanted me enough." Bill added, "My wife has been responsible for the 3 happiest days of my life. The day she agreed to marry me, the day she did marry me, and the day she gave birth to our daughter, Caitlin." Colleen must have seen my inquisitive expression and remarked, "Our daughter is away right now." I hadn't seen any indication of a daughter. She is at South Dakota State University completing her veterinary sciences PhD degree. She has only spent the holidays at home. We are eagerly waiting for her to return carrying her degree. "She's supposed to be home in a couple of months," Bill said. "Having a vet in the family will be great, and should help to reduce some of the costs." I tried to help clean the dishes after supper, but Colleen shooed me away saying it was her job. "Breakfast at 5:30, Bill said, and work would start at 6 o'clock. I saw a copy of today's New York Times on the counter as Sam and I were leaving, perhaps picked up by Bill in town. He approved when I asked whether I might borrow the front page. I requested him to briefly step into my cabin once outside. Inside I pulled out my digital camera and taught him how to operate it. I had him snap a close-up of me displaying the newspaper's front page. Though he never asked, I could see he was fascinated. He did ask about an alarm clock. I told him I had one. Saying he would see me in the morning, he went. I downloaded the image to my computer and wrote an email including a note to the police in my former hometown. The message said I had left town of my own free choice and I was alive and healthy. Selecting a national newspaper over a local one left my whereabouts vague. I emailed Jake asking him to utilize one of the nearby coffee shops with free internet access. My work email was probably still operational, hence I gave my password so he could transmit the original email and picture to the police without leaving any traceable roads. Assuming the police wouldn't commit significant resources to hunt a fugitive husband, this manner I planned to avoid appearing on any FBI or national missing person databases. That night I fell asleep peacefully. I got up at 5 the next morning, showered, and got dressed in time to walk to the main house with Sam. Bill told Sam to get me going installing fence posts in the hillside part after lunch. He pointed out a horse and saddle I would require following Sam to the barn. Drawing on his experience on his uncle's property, he appeared happy with the way I saddled the huge brown horse. We then selected 2 mules and attached saddle packs using a post hole digger to load fence posts. Bill joined us in the barn carrying a saddle scabbard and a Winchester Model 94. He explained it was mostly for the odd occasion when we might have to call down a sick cow. Sam and I mounted up and set off following the creek up into the hills, each leading a mule. Sam and I developed a rapport and had talks while we rode. Trusting he wouldn't betray my confidence, I told the tale of how I landed up in Montana. He returned with his own stories. After graduating from high school, he had married immediately only to find his ex-wife sleeping with another man. Driven by a flash of wrath, he had almost killed the man, earning a 5-year prison term. Bill spent the last 30 years here, and upon his release he was the only one ready to give him an opportunity. Sam said great things about Bill and Colleen, thinking of them as the salt of the earth. Half an hour later we arrived at the fence delineating the property limits. Sam saw that just about every third one of the posts required replacing. Not all of them had rotted or were near to each other. He stayed with me to make sure I was doing it right as I swapped the first 2. He advised working till about 4 o'clock so that I could make it to supper at 6 o'clock, have enough time to return, take care of the horse and mules. To make sure I wouldn't get lost, his parting words were to follow the stream back down. He turned around and left me by myself working. I moved along the line substituting fresh posts for old ones. I stopped at midday and pulled from my saddlebag the pork chop sandwiches Colleen had handed me in the morning. I ate my sandwiches then went back to work. The alert of my watch beeped at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I realized I had set all but a few of the posts the mules had carried up. Leading the mules, I followed the fence line back to locate the brook and started down. I came upon a natural pool with streams in and out just before leaving the woods. Stopped to take in the scenery, I knew it was the most peaceful and lovely place on the property. I managed to unsaddle the animals and feed them in time back at the barn. Sam came to bed down his horse as I was caring for the others. Before dinner, when we savored steaks, we hurried to change and clean up. That evening, tired, I participated little in the discussion and excused myself right after dinner to go to bed. I went fast to sleep and slept deeply. I hurt all over when I woke up. My arms, shoulders, and legs throbbed. My hands hurt from running the post hole digger. Even with my consistent exercise, a 2-hour gym session and a full day of fence post installation differs greatly. Bill and Sam laughed as I hobbled into the kitchen and groaned when I sat down. Colleen too couldn't really disguise her smile. Still, even with the pain, I was starving and ate my meal quickly. Ready for still another fencing day? As we stood from the table, Bill inquired. I moaned and answered, "Yes, sir," trying to project more hope than I felt. Bill laughed. "I suppose you could rest it today. You should ride the rounds with Sam." I nodded with gratitude. Cleaning the stalls and swapping the hay came first. We loaded up in the pickup after placing the horses and mules in the pasture and filling their feeder and started our ranch tour. Our main objective was to make sure no calves were split off from their mothers or cows were down. Sam seemed to have natural knowledge of the ranch. He could almost predict where the animals would be and approximated their count. 30 years later, it seemed to come easily to him. Sam halted the truck as we arrived at the far end of the ranch and looked about. He turned to look at something on one of the hills and handed me his binoculars, pointing to a certain area. A minute later I found 2 calves apparently alone. "Where are their mothers?" I asked. He waved toward 2 cows close to the tree line. "That is them across from each other. Their calves have to have walked into the forest, been disoriented and persisted on. We will have to pull them down." "Are we hiking up there?" I asked. Sam shot back. "Nah, it's too far. We'll go back and load a couple of horses." Sam called Bill, telling him of what we had observed and that we were on our way to fetch the horses. The pickups had 2-way radios. Bill saddled 2 horses and loaded them into a trailer when we got back to the stable. All we needed to do was stock up and head off. Sam guided us along the tree line below the calf location, and we unloaded the horses. Sam knew the area like the back of his hand, so riding up into the hills his 30 years on the ranch became clear once more. We eased down behind the calves half an hour later and started gently pushing them back down the hills. When we cleared the trees and the errant young discovered their mothers, I couldn't help but giggle. Running wailing to their mothers, they went straight to grab a teat to suckle. The bigger cows waited patiently so their young can eat. It seemed so different from my early years. Supper that evening was mashed potatoes, corn on the cob, and fried chicken. Driven now, I spoke more than I had the night before and grew to know Colleen. She was 5 years old when her parents came to the United States from Ireland. Fascinated by stories of the Old West, her father had brought the family to Montana and explained the trace of an Irish brogue in her speech. Much better the following day, I went back to repair the fence posts after breakfast. Sam loaded the mules for me, but this time I left on my own. Following the stream got me to where I needed to be. This day turned out to be less difficult than the first since I had some techniques to reduce the effort of the work. I published the last one just before 4 o'clock and returned to the barn. I worked some of the booths with extra time before tidying for supper. On my 4th day, I helped Sam do some building repairs. I set more fence posts the next day. 2 months passed quickly, and I now rode the property to see the livestock. I was in the most physical form of my life. Sam took Saturdays off, Bill took off Sundays, and Mondays were my days off. We set a calendar. I ran to town if necessary and used my day doing laundry. Everyone on the property had come somewhat dear to me. Sam was laid back and kind. We used to often sit and chat after dinner. We got along great and I really respected Bill since he was honest and diligent. Though I could sense Colleen had some fire in her, she was quite lovely to Sam and me. She and Bill were a wonderful couple taken all together. Colleen and Bill were becoming really enthusiastic. Colleen told me during Friday breakfast that her daughter would be home in 1 week. That day it was my turn riding a horse throughout the forest, looking for cattle that might have strayed into the hills. About 4 o'clock, I headed to the creek, turned to follow it down, and arrived at the pool below the waterfall. I stopped, got off, removed my shirt and knelt down to the water to dip my bandana into the cool stream. I started clearing the dust and sweat from my neck and cheeks. A whinny from downstream drew my eye and I turned to find a horse and rider heading right. I first assumed it was Colleen, but I soon understood this was a younger rendition of her. With her identical crystal blue eyes and red hair like her mother, this stunning woman could only be Caitlin. Riding up, she halted several feet from me. She asked in a chilly voice, "Who are you and what are you doing on this property?" As I got up and faced her. Saying, "The name's Carson, and I work here." "I don't believe you," she said. My dad explained he couldn't afford to pay another hand. I was becoming a little annoyed at her hostile attitude even with her beauty. I said, "Yeah, I overheard that too. That's probably why I chuckle all the way to the bank each paycheck." She looked at me, whirled her horse around, and gave it a sidekick. I laughed to myself, pulled my shirt back on, remounted my horse and headed toward the barn. I later learned that Caitlin's parents had misinterpreted one another. She had arrived a few hours after I had gone out, much to their surprise. They assumed she was returning home the next week. She had spent the morning and early afternoon with her parents until she said she wanted to ride, something she liked to do but had not had time for at school. She hitched up then and rode to her preferred location, the pool and waterfall. I suppose after 2 months I was old news, and Bill and Colleen had omitted to mention me. I saw the rear of the redhead vanish inside as I made back off to the barn. I got off and started to walk my horse inside. Caitlin had been searching for her father when at last she came upon him in the barn. As she inquired, "Who is that man that was up at the waterfall?" I could plainly hear her strong voice. For a moment Bill considered and remarked, "That must have been Carson. He said he works here, but last time I was here you told me you couldn't afford to pay another hand," she remarked. "Well, he is right, he does work here," Bill said. "Regarding his pay, I doubt that is of relevance for your company." "Young woman, I still run this ranch." She choked. "But he said you pay him so much that he laughs all the way to the bank." I had wandered into the barn by then. She didn't notice me, she turned her back on me. Bill did. Grinning broadly, he replied, "Is that true, Carson? Should you believe you're overpaying, I can correct that." She whirled around, locking me in her look. "Well, I would hate to take advantage of you, Bill." I pulled my hat off with one hand and rubbed the back of my head with the other. "Just how much do you intend to lower my pay?" Bill and I started crying laughing at that. She simply kept glaring at both of us, not seeing the joke. "Sweetheart, just so you get that bee out of your bonnet, Carson gets to stay in the cabin next Sam's," Bill remarked. She followed with, "And what else?" "That, and he gets to eat your mother's fine cooking," Bill said. She persisted. "So you're claiming you aren't paying him? Why would he labor for no result?" "He has his reasons, it's not my place to tell you," Bill answered. Then I contributed. "Working to have a chance to taste your mother's cooking is worth a lot, and I don't think she would like to hear you say that it's nothing." She glowed one more at me and bolted from the barn. Shaking his head, Bill added, "She reminds me so much of her mother when she was young." I never imagined I would be carrying Colleen to dinner that evening. Caitlin followed us. She threw me another stinging glance when I walked into the kitchen, seated opposite Sam on the other side of the table. I held out until everyone had loaded their plates before talking. Your mother tells me you have finished your doctorate in veterinary medicine, I added in a friendly way. Her one-word response, offered without looking up, was, yeah. I went on. Sam says he's nearly 30 miles away and that there is only one other vet in the vicinity. I have no doubt that you will be quite helpful to the people living here. She looked up at my comment and I assumed her eyes softened a little. Certainly, that would be Dr. Harrison. He is often needed in more than one location at once and has more business than he can manage. Then Colleen said, I agree with you, Carson. Our Caitlin will deliver a first-rate performance. Throughout the rest of the dinner, Caitlin spoke with her parents and Sam, who had been on the ranch since before she was born. She avoided direct contact with me and I often kept silent. This was her homecoming, and I knew Sam's parents wanted to know what had been happening in her life while she was overseas. I hurried away to turn in as soon as I finished eating. When I got back to my cabin, I looked through my email and found one from Jake. He claimed to have casually asked a friend of his on the police force whether they still regarded me as a missing person. Everything had been dropped, his friend stated, after they got the email including the photo I had provided them. Regarding Janice, Brandon had evidently thrown her as soon as he saw I had vanished with all the money, and it seemed unlikely Janice would be able to get her hands on any of it soon. She was working as a waitress in a city apartment, obviously unable to afford the rent on the property we had been living in. She lacked the funds to get a lawyer to follow after me. She had evidently only married me for my money, and her boyfriend had only desired her for the same reason. My money. I considered it humorous. Though I now only did it every third or fourth day, I was still building fence posts. I had left the hills and was down where I could drive the pickup to where I worked. Loading the posts in the truck's rear rather than on the mules made sense. The morning Caitlin got home, I filled the pickup with posts and drove to where I had left off. I walked to the truck during my regular lunch break and discovered I had forgotten my meal. Colleen would make sure we had lunch if any of us were working far from the main home all day. I suppose I spaced out picking mine. Although I could have driven back to the house, I figured missing one supper would not kill me. Just setting a post about half an hour later, I was attaching the wire when I heard a car approaching. Looking back, I saw among the ranch vehicles one of them. The truck stopped exactly as I was finishing with that post. Turning around, I found Caitlin getting startled. Like the little sacks Colleen packed our lunches in, she carried a little bag. Shoving the sack toward me. Mama said you forgot your lunch, she said. I grabbed it from her out here. Thanks, Caitlin, I answered. That was rather courteous. As usual, I checked the sack and found 2 sandwiches. She shook her head no as I pulled one out for her. I offered the other. I rolled my shoulders and headed to eat from the truck's tailgate. She strolled over to where I was, roughly 5 feet to the side, and simply gazed at me. I ate with my eyes fixed in front of me. At last she questioned, "Why are you here?" Turning, I gazed at her and decided to play a little with her. You can't tell anybody. I stashed the money after robbing a bank. I'm hiding here till the heat is off so I can get the cash. Her eyes became wide initially, then she sent me a glare. She sighed, turned to go, saying, "You're a real clown." I waited to contact her until she reached her truck midway. She halted, then turned slowly around. I wed someone who only wanted the things I could offer her and never loved me. I got up here because I just wanted to temporarily escape what I knew. She fixed another glance at me, and I believe she determined this time I was speaking the truth. She nodded her head and went silent once again. I considered what her dad had said about her mother behaving like that at her age as she drove away. He said he had calmed her, but I thought the key was their love for one another. Less than 24 hours had passed since I first saw Caitlin, and I could not see any man taming that fiery redhead. That evening's dinner was essentially a replay of the evening before. Caitlin talked with Sam and her parents. She didn't know me, hence we had nothing in common and I didn't feel slighted. Actually, Bill went to answer a knock on the door while we were just completing dinner. He entered the kitchen, then followed by a man my age. Women would have called him tall, black and attractive. With great enthusiasm, Caitlin called his name, leaped from her seat and hugged the person. They were clearly gabbing away about how long it had been since they had seen each other, clearly knowing one another. A few minutes later the door knocked once more. Bill responded once more and came back accompanied by another man, this one fair-haired but also attractive. Caitlin also greeted him quite warmly. I remembered Bill's comments of having to battle off every male nearby to win his wife. At least in appearances, Caitlin was exactly the treasure her mother was. I left the meal excusing myself and went back to my cabin. Mentally, I hoped the 2 guys' luck was good. Though I did envy them, whoever won her affections would be a lucky man if Caitlin proved to be the woman her mother was. I grabbed the truck the following day and rode the property. Something didn't seem to match by the time I had done my rounds. Early enough, I returned to pick Sam and we had a whirl-around tour of the ranch. Though he agreed that something didn't feel right, it simply appeared like we were lacking a few herds. There were plenty of cows scattered around the ranch. We resolved we would ride the mountainous sections and saddle up the following day. Bill agreed to our scheme when we brought it up at dinner that evening. That night it rained, which would complicate track search. Bill took us to one end of the property after we loaded our horses into a trailer early the next morning. Sam continued another third higher. I rode perhaps 3/3 of the way up into the tree line. We then crossed the ranch across the hills, across the trees. Reaching the far side took up much of the day. There were 5 stray herds counted here. Bill greeted us as we emerged from the hills. We placed the horses into the trailer and proceeded back. We talked about the matter and agreed that our sole action may be increased vigilance. That evening at supper, Caitlin received another call from a suitor. Her mother murmured something about that, the third one she had that day. Word had leaked that she was returning home, and men were crawling out of the timber work looking for her. We kept a close check on the herd for 4 more days. Except for the suspected original loss, everything seemed to be in order. Caitlin's potential mates kept paying visits. She had been home for a week and had not spoken to me 2 words since the day she brought my lunch. On the 5th day following the apparent livestock disappearance, I told Bill I wanted to bike the property line across the hills. We had seen no proof the missing animals had crossed through the grazing regions and we had already covered the fence lines there. Sam dropped me off to the west side of the property, where Bill's bordered Wilson property. I saw 3 new sets of horse tracks crossing from the Wilson side of the fence onto Bill's side around midway to the southwest corner. The odd thing was the fence wire was still up. After dismounting and looking at the fence posts, I discovered that 5 of the staples had been loosened and were hardly keeping the wire upright. Eliminate the staples, lower the wire, and you may cross across. Reverse the wire and staples, and it looked right. I went remounted following the tracks. Approaching the stream, I noticed 3 horses tethered to a tree somewhat above the waterfall. Still roughly 30 yards distant, I rapidly tied my horse to a tree and drew the gun from its sheath. When I arrived at the horses, I discovered boot prints headed downstream. I staggered to the brink of the waterfall, peered over, then gasped. Naked as the day she was born, Caitlin was in the pool. The image captivated me since she swam across the lake, her naked body obviously on show in the pure water. A movement in the trees to her right helped me to come back to reality. I looked fast around and noticed 2 additional men approaching the pond on the left and 1 guy to the right. I lifted my firearm and fired. On the right, the bullet landed close to the guy's feet. 1 more fast trigger pull and the dirt erupted near the left 2 guys. A blood-curdling scream from Caitlin reverberated over the woods. Rising so everyone can see me, I cried. On your bellies now. I won't be missing the following shot. Stay where you are, Caitlin. She simply saw me standing over her clutching a weapon and battled to hide her body. She hadn't noticed the 3 males. One of the men on the left gasped as if he were about to flee, but as I pressed the trigger once again the bark of the tree next to him burst. Persuaded, he dropped flat down. Looking where I had fired, Caitlin saw the 2 men shrieking once again. I began to count down. Before I could say 1, the other 2 dropped down too. I told them right away to place their hands behind their heads, and they complied. I asked Caitlin right away to leave and change. She tried to object, but I growled at her to just follow my directions, get ready and go. Clearly terrified, I could see her shivering from where I stood, but she followed my direction. She left the pool like Venus rising out of the sea. She emerged from the sea back away from me, but I couldn't look away from her. Her alabaster skin and the most precisely shaped butt I'd ever seen stayed with me always. She just put on her jeans and blouse, swung up upon her horse and kicked once to be across the woods. I told the men one by one to get up on their knees and then lie back down when she was away. I sighed with relief just when all 3 were before me. I judged it time for a bluff. What then ought I to do with you 3? I could just shoot you in the legs and see you die slowly. The 3 men started to ask me to spare them. Even if I spare you, I replied, Caitlin's father will guarantee justice when I tell him of your horrible plans regarding his daughter. Unless, of course, you have something like cattle rustling for your confession to the sheriff. Although it can result in jail, at least it gives you a chance at life. The tiniest among them cracked. Indeed, we did it. Wilson said breaking Buckman would guarantee Wilson his land. His friend quieted him to close, but he answered, I ain't dying for no damn cows. Knowing Caitlin would be back quickly and her father would surely investigate, I decided to purchase more time. As expected, 45 minutes later Bill and Sam galloped right front. They motioned me down, then rushed up to meet me at the top of the climb. What in the devil is happening? Bill wanted it. It seems some of Wilson's hands paid us a visit unwelcomely. I followed them here from the fence line. 3 were trying to sneak up on Caitlin while she was swimming. I pushed my rifle's barrel up against the smaller man's neck. I believe this one has something he wants to confess to you. Again prodded, he whined. We did it. Although we grabbed some of your animals, Wilson drove us. Bill turned his cap back and grinned at Sam. You know, they hung cattle rustlers and horse thieves when my grandfather managed this property. Back then justice sometimes felt easier. Too bad these days we have to be polite. Bill and I decided to march the rustlers back down carrying rifles while Sam stood guard. Sam tethered their horses together and raised the rear, thereby trailing after them. When we arrived at the buildings, we guided the rustlers into the barn and arranged them in individual stalls with open doors that let us monitor without them seeing each other. Bill entered the house to summon the sheriff, Sam and I watching from behind. The sheriff raced the long drive in less than 30 minutes. Bill met him and briefed him on the developing events. He agreed when I suggested first bringing the smaller offender out so the sheriff could question her. I went right outside with my prisoner. First reluctant, the small rustler seemed to think about his quietness and started talking. Looking at Bill, the sheriff remarked, "It seems that our case here is simple trespassing. Though I could leave them in your hands, honestly it's a little waste of my time. Ignore me, I will let you manage things." The scared rustler opened suddenly and expanded his eyes. The sheriff called for assistance as he quickly pulled the truth. Not too long later, Wilson's large property was inundated with the sheriff's car convoy. The sheriff found approximately 100 stolen cattle bearing the Rocking Bee brand, even though the area the rustler pointed out was quite large. By day's end Wilson and his friends were behind bars. In among the chaos, it was well past 9 when we sat for dinner. Though seated at the table, Caitlin kept her eyes fixated on her dish. "What were you outside doing?" Having not had much opportunity to interact with her, Bill asked her directly. "I was swimming right now." She flashed me an accusing look, saying, "I didn't think anyone would spy on me." I interrupted. "First of all, Caitlin, I wasn't watching you. I followed their horse trails across to the stream. Second, think about what may have happened without me. Those 3 were probably not planning a picnic when they noticed you swimming shirtless." Colleen said, "Thanks goodness you showed Carson when you did." I shuddered to consider what might have happened. Aware of an early start the next day, the discussion changed and we rapidly ate our dinner. Coming out of the kitchen toward my cabin, Caitlin shouted to me. Stopped and waited as she angrily asked, "So, did you enjoy the view today?" Anticipating thanks proved overly optimistic, so I said, "Let's just say I'd be dishonest if I claimed it wasn't breathtaking." She sniffed and turned on her heels, striding toward the house. I stood shaking my head, realizing there was something about me that regularly hooked her. Bill had to go into town formally charging Wilson the next day. Returning the pilfers of cattle to their proper area would take several days since the prosecutor had to first completely document the case. Sam and I worked through some of the barns renewing the paint all day. We had lunch in the kitchen, but Caitlin declined to join us, a choice that would have been perfectly acceptable. Bill came back early in the afternoon but waited until dinner to report the changes. "Wilson and his friends will be released on bond since this wasn't a capital case," he said. Although he expected no more conflict, he advised us to be alert. Looking at his daughter, he grinned cheekily and remarked, "If you're planning on another nude swim anytime soon, maybe you should take Carson along, for protection." Her cheeks was red and she staggered as she stood and hurried to her room. Bill and Sam burst out in laughter, and even Colleen found herself giggling. I laughed at their pace. We started our dinner when the laughs stopped. Bill kept his gentle mocking going. "I truly owe thanks to Carson. Wilson might have financially risked this property rather significantly. You are well worth every penny." We had yet another round of jokes. 3 days later Bill was informed he could have his livestock back. Riding with a sheriff's escort, we loaded 3 horses into a trailer and headed to Wilson's Flying Doll Ranch. Once we had the horses unloaded, Colleen came along to run the truck and trailer back. Starting to drive the cows back toward his ranch, Bill, Sam and I rode ahead and loosened a section of the fence line as we neared the Rocking Bee Ranch so the cattle could pass over. Content with the day's work, we tightened the fencing and rode back to the main house after making sure every cow was back where it belonged. Caitlin had filed for her veterinarian license during this period. She could only tend to the animals on her father's property for now, while the approval procedure usually took 45 days. I would find her all around the place and, naturally, at mealtimes. If I could catch her eye, Despite her silent treatment, I would grin broadly and wriggle my eyebrows, always enough to make her flush. 2 weeks following the waterfall incident, we discovered ourselves in the barn at the same time. "Been enjoying any swims lately?" I asked. She walked up, inches apart, and glowed at me. "Why are you such a **** hole?" I shrugged, laughed and asked, "Why are you such a **********?" Her right hand sought my face, but I moved quickly to seize her wrist before she could hit. Still undeterred, she attempted with her left and I caught that too. Pushing both hands behind her back, I pinned her and drove her body against mine. I dropped my face slowly near hers. She gazed at me but did not try to break away. "If you were mine, I'd put you over my knee and spank your butt," I remarked then. Pulling back, she said, "You wouldn't dare." I let off suddenly, and she dropped backward crashing on her butt. I just got rid of one woman who doesn't care about me. I'm not wasting my time on another. I wouldn't dare. She was the one who used to storm off first, but this time it was my turn. I walked out of the barn, leaving her on the ground. I saw her just before dinner. She avoided me predictably, but I couldn't interpret the look she gave me. Not that I ever claimed to know women anyhow. That proved true in my marriage to Janice. The next day I was in the barn looking over the stalls when Bill entered. Knowing Sunday was his day off, I reasoned he wanted to chat. I questioned whether Caitlin had told him about the incident from the previous day and whether he had come to urge me to leave. As he neared, I stopped working. "I heard you and Caitlin had a little showdown yesterday," he stated then. That addressed my concern about whether Caitlin had told her father, but I sensed a glitter in his eyes. "Sure, you might say that," I replied. "Most likely my fault." He went on. "Maybe, maybe not. Her problem, in my opinion, is her uncertainty of what to regard you. She considered you to be here for something first, then you turned into the hero saving the ranch and her. Why you aren't following after her like the other local young men is something she finds incomprehensible. Like her mother at her age, Caitlin is accustomed to having men encircling her little finger. She has had a couple of boyfriends, but none stayed. She hardly seemed to respect them. Simply said, 'I hope you don't let her chase you off. In my book, you are welcome here as long as you wish.'" I answered, "Thanks, Bill, that means a lot to me. I'll stop taunting Caitlin, hopefully allowing us to live and let live." He left the barn and I started working again. I thought about Bill's comments throughout the rest of the day. Acting respectfully and having a discourse would be more successful than Caitlin's present method in helping her to understand me. Regarding her like the others, that simply wasn't in the cards. She skipped dinner that evening, a subject no one brought up, and I asked nothing. Even on my day off, I followed my schedule the next day, getting up at 5 as normal. Breakfast done. After Sam and Bill left for work, I got my washing. Bill had made significant investments in a big industrial washer and dryer, allowing me to run one load of all of my clothes. Since the laundry room was next to the kitchen, I stayed at the kitchen table eating and talking with Colleen while my clothes washed. Usually choosing to eat later, Caitlin entered, an unusual event for breakfast. Colleen inquired about my daily agenda and I mentioned I was considering traveling into town. I then inquired whether she wanted anything specifically for me to pick up. She mentioned that, should I be so inclined, there were a few items I could acquire for her. I guaranteed her I wouldn't mind at all. Caitlin interrupted at that. "Cool, I'll bike into town with you. It seems like a waste of petrol for both of us to go separately." I had intended to go to the local shop for a few things. Surprised, I turned to say, "Sure, I would be happy to give you a lift." After yesterday, I hadn't expected her to approach me, let alone ask to travel anywhere with me. "I'll be leaving in about an hour and a half, after my laundry is done and put away," I said. She said she would be ready. She sat at the table, silent as Colleen and I carried on our talk after finishing cooking something to eat. Later when I left my cabin, she came out from the rear door looking gorgeous in a turquoise sundress that matched her red hair. She clearly wanted for me to see her. Keeping the passenger side door open for her, I saw her slide inside the car. We started off, and she watched the countryside silently for half of the journey. She said suddenly, "I thought you were going to kiss me yesterday." I looked at her, but she appeared to be staring out the side window and her face eluded me. So I answered, "Well, while that may not have been unpleasant, I do have a rule about not forcing unwanted affections upon unreceptive females." Her head whirled around out of the corner of my vision, and I knew she was staring at me. She sat silently, but I detected sporadic looks in my direction. We turned around and entered the general store. She had a list of things her mother wanted and I had to pick some fresh pairs of pants and blouses. An hour later we got everything loaded. Lunchtime arrived, and I was hungry. I had one more visit at the hardware shop for a few things for Bill. She agreed when I advised we stop for a bite to eat. We drove into the same diner where Bill and Colleen had first met. We ordered our food and set a table across from one another. Sitting in quiet, I started to consider maybe I should have gone directly to the hardware store and then back to the ranch. The door swung open just then, 3 men walking in. 2 of them were the guys who had come knocking on Caitlin. They rushed for our table. The third stood behind me while 2 took seats on either side. They started chatting to her and ignored me. Rising from my seat, I pointed for the third one to settle in as I proceeded to the next table. I motioned the waitress over to have her place our lunch in front of me when she delivered it. I ate fast, without looking at the conversation happening at Caitlin's table. Rising to cover our supper from some bills on the table, her plate was still full and Caitlin had hardly eaten her dinner. I am going to dash to the hardware store. Later on, I can stop back here to see whether you're ready to go, I remarked, stepping in to interrupt their talk. She shoved her plate back, got up and said, "It was nice seeing you guys again, but we have to go." The men seated at the table tried to object. One even volunteered to drive home. She turned away and trailed me to my SUV. She stayed in the car looking to be fuming as we drove to the hardware store. The quiet suspense followed us back to the ranch. She exclaimed, "Why did you do that?" turning off the highway down the mile-long driveway. "What?" I said, not sure what she was pointing out. "Reading to the other table," she said. "Oh, it is interesting. I assumed then that you would rather hang out with your buddies. Besides, I wanted not to be in the thick of their vying for your attention." She snapped, "You really are a hole." I kept my mouth closed wisely. I had no desire to fight her slaps while behind the wheel. She pulled up to the main home and collected what she could carry right away as soon as I opened the SUV's back. I carried extra bags and trailed her inside the house. She threw everything on the kitchen table without saying anything to her mother as I stepped in the rear door, then walked off toward her room. Colleen turned to ask a dubious question. I said, "I guess I'm in a hole," shrugging. She laughed and moved up to lay a hand on my arm. "I have never seen someone affect Caitlin the way you seem to have." I responded, "I guess I was born to just piss her off." She left me wondering when she said, "I'm not so sure about that." I went back to my cabin and tucked up my fresh wardrobe. Choosing to get out from under confinement, I saddled a horse in the barn. I ended up sitting at the top of the waterfall sitting out. The weather was good, so I tied the horse to a tree and sat at the fall's edge staring down the still pool. Caitlin rode up below me, getting off her horse, half an hour or maybe longer seated there. Not wanting to be accused of spying in case she was skinny dipping once more, I grabbed a stone and threw it down to produce a splash in the water. She turned around looking for the noise source and saw me. She expected to be leaving, but instead mounted her horse and galloped up to where I was seated. Was walking toward me from her horse, which was hitched beside mine. Rising, I moved away from the brink in case she intended to shove me off. Stopped inches from me, she said, "You're a hole. And you're still a B*********, I said. I skipped waiting for her slap this time. I held her about the waist and kissed her, releasing her fast. She grabbed my arm and turned me back around even as I tried to approach my horse. When she grabbed behind my neck and drew me in for another kiss, I was astounded. We discovered ourselves in an enthusiastic hug. Our clothing vanished and we had a great time as the enthusiasm developed. Our breathing settled gradually, and we stayed in a quiet embrace. We groomed, mounted our horses, and rode back. She turned and headed to the main house after stealing our mount silently. I went back to my cabin in a haze and slid into the shower. One thing became very clear. I felt far more for this fascinating woman than I had admitted to myself. I hardly had time to get dressed for dinner. Bill, Colleen, Sam were already in the kitchen when they arrived, but Caitlin was nowhere to be seen. She came in as we were seated and chose the chair next to mine instead of her normal spot near Sam. Bill and Colleen looked at one another, and Caitlin just grinned politely. She animatedly spoke during dinner. Though curious, her parents avoided questioning why their daughter was in such great spirits. She helped her mother tidy the kitchen after dinner while Sam and I returned to our cabins. Just as I had snuggled between the sheets, my door knocked softly. Wearing just my boxers, I unlocked the door and Caitlin slid inside, toward my arms. We kissed tenderly, and she led me back to my bed following her clothes shedding. Once more, we made love before nodding out into each other's embrace. The sudden arrival of 5 a.m. made me groggy, reach over and turn off the screaming alarm. I forced myself from bed with tremendous reluctance. I left a soft kiss on her head, then lit the bathroom and got ready for the day before sliding out of the cabin. I couldn't ignore Bill and Colleen's careful looks during breakfast. I asked whether they knew where their daughter disappeared to at night. I loaded the pickup after the dinner so I could install fence posts another day. Working on a ranch by yourself gave lots of time for reflection. My thoughts turned to my recent past, amazed that only 3 months had passed since divorcing my wife. It seemed like a lifetime. I thought about the meaning Bill, Colleen, and Sam had in my life. Then my thoughts turned to the lovely Caitlin and the shared events from yesterday. I thought about the kind of love her parents embodied. I found once more at lunch that I had neglected to pack my lunch. The idea came to me and I heard a pickup racing toward me. Caitlin shot out, sprinting toward me with a bag. She launched herself at me, planted a passionate kiss, then handed me the bag. Ignoring the supper, I drew her in for another passionate kiss. I set my post to her a few times even though I didn't mark as many fence posts that day. We also found time to converse throughout our passionate times. I shared specifics of my past life, including how my ex-wife had betrayed me. I told her, "The only way I will leave is if you tell me to go." She came home at last, and I completed today's tasks. She was in the kitchen when I arrived, having a shower and changing, once more selecting the seat next to mine. A knock at the front door mid-meal was heard. Bill responded and came back carrying the same man who had first called on Caitlin. Caitlin gazed at him, her face unreadable, the minute he was seated. "I was wondering if you might want to go for a drive," he asked. Driving was practically a euphemism for going on a date in this section of the nation where choices were few. "I appreciate the offer, but I don't think my boyfriend would like it," Caitlin said. She slanted over to kiss my cheek. Blushed and flustered, Mr. Tall, Dark, and Handsome hurried out. That conversation let our friendship be seen clearly. Looking at Bill and Colleen, I saw approving smiles. Bill wore a huge smile. We had formally become a couple. Local males calling on Caitlin stopped paying visits in the next few days. She made it abundantly apparent she was not accessible. I figured out how I might help her with her ideas. She was looking for a loan from the bank to buy the tools her veterinary company needed. The only choice was to have her father list the ranch as collateral. The bank was reluctant to grant an unsecured loan. She was not sure she should ask him. "I recommend a few days. I might have an answer." I opened an account under the pretense of a fictional loan company by calling my offshore bank. On my computer, Caitlin completed a loan application that I had configured to direct to my email. 2 days later, I informed her her loan had been approved and a wire transfer would be delivered to her account. The news delighted her, but she wondered why the loan only carried a 2% annual rate. They were a non-profit charitable group lending money to people they thought would benefit the community, I said. I knew she was too proud to take the money, even if I could have just given her it. Having acquired her degree by diligence, she was resolved to achieve on her own terms. She had bought a new van, turned into a mobile veterinarian office with all the required tools by the time her license was issued. Local ranchers called for her services as word of her license status got out. Many evenings Caitlin stayed in my cabin with me. Bill and Colleen seemed to have no objections even though they knew. She was old enough at 27 to be making her own decisions. Wilson and his team faced trial 3 months later. The case was really simple. The smallest man cooperated with the prosecutors, getting 2 years of probation instead of jail. Each of the 5 other hands Wilson hired received 5 years in prison. Wilson, the brains behind the rustle, was sentenced to 10 years and fined $50,000. I looked into him and his ranch when he was sent to jail. There was no one left to handle the ranch when he found he was single with no family in the vicinity and with all his hands imprisoned. This let me create a fresh strategy. But before I started it, I had to conclude my divorce, some unresolved stuff. It was unacceptable to me to consider Janice having half my money. I sought help once more from my friend Jake to reach this. I requested him to speak with Janice instead of writing an email, so phoning him I wanted him to say that I had gotten in touch and wanted to provide a settlement in exchange for a divorce. The offer was just $50,000. She would never hear from me once she turned down and would not get paid either. Playing innocent at first, she insisted on knowing why I'd left and why I would not be coming back. The act came apart when Jake came clean about her romance with Brandon and her intention to divorce me. Janice accepted my offer when her game was revealed. She is still a waitress and suffers financially. I had to go back to Texas and get a lawyer to draft the divorce paperwork before moving forward. When I told Caitlin of my leaving, she was not happy. I told her I would be back and stated I had to shut that chapter of my life. She insisted on taking me and being there upon my return. Even though at first I intended to leave my car in long-term parking at the airport. Leaving behind my SUV and most of my stuff, except for what would fit in one suitcase, seemed to help her relax. On a Sunday, I left and Jake picked me up at the airport. Making sure to call Caitlin every night, I stayed with his family. Friday saw all the paperwork arranged. Explaining that Janice would get a check for $10,000 right away and that the rest $40,000 would be paid in 60 days following the divorce, Jake brought Janice to my lawyer. She signed the paperwork, and my attorney handed her the $10,000 payment. Never had to deal with Janice. Then I realized I had personal stuff in storage. Yearbooks, souvenirs and antiques from my parents, and other precious objects. Wanting not to go back for them later, I hired a moving van and loaded it. When I told Caitlin I wasn't flying back, she was first surprised, but her enthusiasm about my homecoming rose as I explained I was bringing back everything significant to her. To get the distance covered, I drove nonstop for 3 days. Everyone greeted me enthusiastically as I arrived Tuesday night at the Rockinby Ranch. Caitlin kept extending her friendly welcome till early dawn, when we at last nodded off, completely worn out. My first half of the strategy was finished. Now I was ready to apply the rest. This included many visits to the jail where Wilson was housed. I wanted him to sell me his property. At first hostile, I kept arguing my case. He would be imprisoned for at least 7 years, I noted, and even with good behavior, he would not be eligible for release. Without someone to look after his ranch, his house and structures would probably fall apart, and his animals would probably die over the winter without appropriate care. I also wondered whether he would be welcomed back following his conviction. When the prospect of ruin presented itself, he finally took my offer and had something to start over with when released. Securing funding came next. Knowing Janice wouldn't compromise her $40,000 by acting rashly, I moved my money back into the country. It was really simple to get financing as I negotiated a $5 million price with Wilson that was less than the actual value of the property. I financed the $500,000 down payment I made. Spending a month finishing everything, I kept my activities under wraps except for Caitlin and Bill. I told them I needed to give my assets some personal business-related attention. I established a corporation and registered the land under its name even though I only spent 1 or 2 days a week on it. I hired someone to cut the hay on the land as summer was closing and fall was setting in. In the meanwhile, I also used 4 hands to run the ranch and live on site. Appointed as temporary foreman, the most experienced hand explained that, albeit being close, I would be an absentee owner for a while. I promised him he could always reach me by phone, and I scheduled regular trips to the property. The last component of my strategy was renovating the main house, a 2-story 5-bedroom property requiring modernizing. Even if Caitlin was annoyed with my hiding of my activities, our connection kept flourishing. Every day my love for her deepened and I sensed she felt the same about me. Her veterinary practice grew rapidly and she had to be on the road often, yet she was comfortable and joyful. It got to the point where I almost told her about what I was doing, almost leaking the beans. She cornered me with questions after coming back to check on the remodeling. What the devil is Carson doing? You see someone else? God, no, I said. I swear there is no one else. I simply have certain tasks I have to finish. Please believe me, I will shortly tell you everything. Please start to believe me. Okay Carson, I do trust you, but you better tell me what's going on soon, or I'm going to kick your ass, she added, examining my face in quest of the truth. I grabbed her and planted all the love I could on a kiss. The main house renovation was finished as spring started and calving season got underway. It was time to carry out the last element of my scheme. I invited Caitlin to drive one afternoon while she was alone herself. I have been considering it time for me to leave the Rockinby Ranch, I told her. Her eyes filled with tears instantly, then she continued, but I promised I wouldn't leave. I had timed it to coincide with our arrival to the former Flying Doll Ranch's gate. I turned in and was going down the private road. I wasn't particularly intending to travel far, I said. She turned to glance about, obviously perplexed. I'm not sure she listened to what I said. She then inquired as to our activities on Wilson's territory. I put off responding until we arrived at the main home. I told her to come on so I could show her something. Out of the truck, I walked around opening her door. I took her hand and walked her to the front door, opening it. What the heck are we doing? She said once again. For this we might run afoul of rules. I advised her to unwind, that Wilson no longer owns the ranch, and that we should look about. I wanted to find out her opinion of the house. We walked through the bedrooms upstairs, then returned downstairs. The living room was spacious, the den was elegantly paneled, 2 rooms set up as home offices, and last but not least the kitchen. Her look told me she was delighted at the new kitchen. The one room with furniture was the one I meant to use for my office. The rest of the house waited for her choices about its furnishings. When I asked her what she thought of the house, she replied it was rather lovely. When I then questioned whether she felt she could live there, she exclaimed, "What the hell is going on?" She was clearly perplexed and growing agitated. I lowered to one knee and reached into my jacket pocket with a hand. I told Wilson I did and that she could live on the ranch as my wife. Wilson no longer owned it. She answered in an unexpected tone, "You own the house." I nodded furiously, and she said, "Yes." I then pulled the engagement ring from my pocket, held it up and asked her to marry me. Her face wrinkled and tears flooded her eyes. I first assumed I had made a mistake till she tackled me into my back and planted lips over my face. She then held her finger so I could slide the ring on. She then turned about the house with fresh eyes, running from room to room and closely looking at everything. I waited calmly till she returned sprinting back into my arms. She exclaimed fervently, "The house is beautiful, I love it." She followed me across the room to 2 doors opening off a hall. I added, "There are 2 offices, one for you to run your business from and one for me," receiving yet another long kiss. After guiding her into the office with the desk, I brought out a big sheet of paper. Its sketch had a property gate bearing the name Double C Ranch above it. Examining it closely, she wondered what the Double C meant. "It stands for Carson and Caitlin Ranch," I told her. I joined her, stripping her off when she started tugging at my clothes. She was crying. I set her atop the desk, and together we christened the office with our love. We made love in every room of our new house in the next few days. It was time to go tell her parents, once we had recovered and changed clothes. I believe she floated out to the truck, clearly delighted. A few minutes after 6 we returned and Bill, Colleen and Sam were already in the kitchen having dinner. Walking in together, Caitlin waved her left hand and shrieked, "We're getting married!" Bill and Sam came over, pumped my hand and patted me on the back while Colleen got up and ran over to hug her daughter. Then Caitlin hugged her father and Sam, and my future mother-in-law gave me a huge hug. Once things cooled off, we all sat down to eat. Caitlin waited till everyone finished their meals. "Of course, this means we will be moving," she remarked as apathetically as could be. Bill, Colleen, and Sam said simultaneously, "What?" I answered, "Well, Bill, you know how Wilson wanted to combine his ranch with yours?" She pressed me to inform them. I reasoned it might be a benefit. Standing angrily, Bill shouted, "There's no way in hell the flying doll is going to get his ranch." Laughing, I advised him to cool off. "It's no more the flying doll but the Double C Ranch. The new owners are seated at your table right now." Confused, he asked me what I was referring to. "I bought out Wilson. Now, Double C, Carson and Caitlin own the ranch," I said. Colleen realized it immediately. Bill sat down, turned to face Colleen, and she nodded her head. We shook on his hand he held across the table to me. "Damn it, Carson, I accept your offer although this will take some getting used to." I answered, "This implies Sam will be the head foreman since we will have more hands to monitor. And now I get to remove all those fence posts I labored so hard to install on that side of the property." Everyone laughed. That evening was a noisy party. Caitlin wore me out and slept at my cabin overnight. The next morning we arrived late for breakfast, yet everyone was still in the kitchen when we arrived. They were waiting for us to eat so that Caitlin might show off our new house and we could all go over to the Double C Ranch. Everyone was amazed. I watched Colleen glare angrily at the rebuilt kitchen. Caitlin and her mother spent a month furnishing the house. On our wedding night, it was ready to move into. We married on the Double C Ranch. Respected and well-liked, Bill and his family invited ranchers and their families from miles around to mark the occasion. I was invited into Caitlin's life as her husband, Bill's son-in-law, and new Double C Ranch owner. We at last got to bed later that evening and stayed there, having love all evening and most of the next day. We would still be there, but on our 3rd day of marriage I brought her to Fiji for a tropical honeymoon. Our first roundup that year turned out nicely, and we sold a lot of cattle for a good profit. A good amount went into loan payoff, but Caitlin's company was allowing us to live comfortably. We even built Sam a wonderful new house, and he now lives in town with an age-appropriate partner. We might be having another wedding very soon. Another year has passed, and my lovely wife recently delivered the most amazing news. She is pregnant. We are going to be parents. One last note before I leave. I know some who would argue I should have signed a prenuptial agreement and paid my lesson the first time. If so, you really have not come to know my Caitlin. She isn't Janice. She takes care of our house and gives her job great effort. She is the daughter of her mother and loves me daily with just me. Every day peering into her blue Irish eyes, I find love.